Can you hear that at all?
I love that song.
You know this?
Yeah, who wrote it? I can.
So Klaus wrote that in 65
Oh yeah,
and
right from the Bill
he
Evans album, huh?
so he wrote it and then they recorded it for the trio a symphony, and then when Bill passed away, he rearranged it for symphony orchestra with the LSO, and then I'm almost positive he's playing piano on the LSO version. And that's actually just a
Wow,
piano fragment that sounds like Bill playing. And I just chose to
wow,
orchestrate that for fun the other day, like a crossword puzzle or something. So there's two versions of it. And
wow. No, well,
same thing with
three now with
Symbiosis.
yours.
Huh?
There's three now with yours
Okay,
also.
fair enough. But yeah, same thing with Symbiosis that he did with Bill. They
Oh
did
yeah,
Symbiosis on what, MPS or something.
I think
And
so. Yeah.
then yeah, and then he turned that into a concerto for orchestra with the LSO. And it's like a
Yeah. Wow.
45-minute long piece.
I haven't heard that. I need
Yeah.
to hear. I mean, I know Symbiosis and I know the I don't. I always forget the name, but the symphonic album where he plays the classical pieces, Bill Evans,
Hmm.
and where that
Yeah.
tune Elegy
Yeah.
uh, is the only composition by Klaus Ogerman, I think, on
There's
the.
so much good stuff. I'll send it to you. It's unfortunately, it's not out. It's not on any streaming.
How
It's
did you find it?
only on CD
Ah, okay. Hmm.
and records. So yeah, he
Hmm.
did stuff with a ton of stuff with the LSO. And matter of fact, the concerto for orchestra, I think the way that got financed was they asked him to come out of retirement to do charts for Diana Krall. And
Right.
I think he was like, "I'll do it if you pay for the recording."
Yeah.
Or something, because he retired in, I think the last album he did was with Jobim Terra Brasilis or something like that. He quit
That's
arranging in 79 or 80.
yeah. That's pretty
Just
early.
yeah,
Early retirement.
yeah. Well, he
You
had
know
been
this?
doing movies in Germany since like the 50s or something,
Yeah.
and like a lot of just like easy listening crap and stuff like that. So when he came to America in the 50s, like he already had money,
Hmm.
you know. But I love it. I'll send you his documentary. I mean, fortunately for you, it's in German, and you know, unfortunately for me. But yeah, he just talks about being an arranger. That he calls it being in the framing business, like picture frame. And
Yeah.
I don't think he thought very highly of the craft. Like I know he loved it, but I think he just felt like it was nothing compared to serious music. So
Interesting.
yeah, I'll send it to you when we hang up. It's fascinating. It's like a 2 hour long documentary in German.
Oh, great. I'll check it out. Thank you.
Yeah, yeah, of course. Anyway,
When was the first time you heard that elegy piece?
it was my friend Matteo Laboriel. I heard it via his father, Abe Laboriel Sr., the bass player, because Abe had played on a Klaus album with Michael Brecker. I'm pretty sure.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah,
Cityscapes or which one?
he might. I think he is on Cityscapes. He might be. And I
Interesting.
know he's
Hmm.
on another one that came out on GRP. And so I sort of got it from his father, and I was just blown away because, sometimes harmony that's very colorful can sort of sound a little pretentious, I think.
Hmm.
And there's just a beauty and also a coldness, like a sadness to his harmony, but it just doesn't sound pretentious. And I don't want to name certain groups to that their harmony sounds pretentious, but sounds a little too music school and a little too slick and trying to impress someone with reharms. And his is just so beautiful.
Yeah, it has a pure quality also. All
Yeah,
the sounds are crystal clear in
yeah,
a way.
yeah, yeah. He's absolutely like one of my favorite composers. And the funny thing is that nobody really knows he's a composer.
Yeah.
They just know him as an arranger.
So
So
when you go about and orchestrate
yeah,
that you said as a game, as a
yeah,
almost like a
yeah,
crossword puzzle,
yeah.
how do you go about it?
Do you want me to share my screen, or you're not going to be able to talk if I do? But
This I don't need to talk. Show me.
okay, yeah, sure. Um, I will show you. So let me just pick a window here. So this is Sibelius, and this is like close to being finished, but not finished. So I'm still sort of in sketch mode, but
Can I ask one thing right away? Sorry for
yeah, of
interrupting.
course, of course.
When you say it's not finished, when you do something like this, do you think about a purpose for this, or like this will be recorded by so and so, or do you just do it for your own as a kind of an exercise also?
I mean, kind of all of it. This is just a piano fragment from a larger composition, and this fragment has not been orchestrated in Klaus's version. It's just like a piano sort of break. So this is for just the joy, like music for music's sake.
Yeah.
And it's sort of like a crossword puzzle because, you're kind of sweating every bar, thinking about every move that you can possibly make. It's also like a teaching tool. It's fun to kind of just have a student and kind of just take them through the thought process of how I'm going about it. Sometimes I sort of feel like how someone thinks is almost more important than the final result.
How do you mean?
Like Ravel, for example, who's my favorite orchestrator on the planet. Like, I don't think the goal is to compose and sound like Ravel, but maybe how he thinks when he's orchestrating. Is he thinking by section? Is he thinking in terms of color rather than lines? And just sort of the thought process, I think, because then you're not learning to sound like someone, you're just learning sort of their way of thinking and conceptualizing, if that makes any sense.
Mm-hmm.
Kind
But
of
how
like
can
when
we
go ahead, sorry.
how can we get closer to, I have that I know this feeling of when you really, really study somebody,
Hmm.
after a while you kind of get the idea of maybe he or she or they are thinking like how they are thinking,
Yeah, yeah.
you would agree like that this comes from like being an actual nerd about this and living with this artist.
Yeah, here, I'm going to stop my sharing for a second because I don't know if it's going to hide you. But yeah, I think quantity counts because you're studying someone's musical instincts.
Mm-hmm.
And so it's kind of like, you study one Ravel piece or whomever it is, one solo, that's them on a Tuesday at 2 in the morning. But,
Mm-hmm.
maybe you study 50 ballads of Bill Evans and you start to see, oh, I noticed that when this, you just draw certain conclusions. There's certain preferences. So that's why I say quantity counts. I mean, quality does too, in terms of like the pieces that you enjoy listening to. But, if I were to speak in Ravel, for example, the more stuff I look at by him, I start to notice certain things like, oh, when he wants a quiet pedal, he'll use a horn and a fiber mute.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, he's
Yeah.
not using that. He'll use whatever, clarinet and octaves. It's like you study him enough that you start to go, okay, there's only three things he's going to do in a situation where he's trying to recreate mist, like the sustain pedal from the piano.
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
if I only study one piece, it's like, well, maybe that's just what he did in that particular piece.
Exactly. Yeah.
So that's why I love going crazy deep. And with Ravel, what I did, which is kind of a little nuts, is, and fortunately, because of the way Ravel worked, is like he chose to orchestrate a lot of his piano music. So I would these are just random pieces of paper, but I would take his regular piano edition of something. So for example, his opera, To l'heure espagnole, which is not, one of his most popular pieces. So I would just look at the piano score. I'd put it up on my piano and I'd have the full score here. So they'd be right next to each other. And I would just look at a fragment or a phrase or something. And I'd be like, okay, what do I think Ravel would do? And I'd have the full score right next to me. So I could easily just rip it open and be like, oh, okay,
Yeah.
he did that. And it's like a tease because I would be like, I would break it down by the, okay, well, that's a melody, that's a background, foreground, or however you look at it. In French, they say like the first plane, the second plane, like planes of tone and stuff. So I would just think, okay, well, I'm just going to make something up, like, okay, it's pianissimo, so he's not going to be using a trumpet for the melody, and the background's not going to be a brass chorale, so maybe it's a string harmonic pad, or maybe it's this or whatever. In the very beginning, I was just always getting stuff wrong, and then I would look, but I would make sure to stare at the piano part for about a good 10 minutes to like really exhaust it. And it's a little bit, not to make music sexual, but a little bit like foreplay of like the answer's right there. I can get right to it, but I want to like really think about it. And after a few months of kind of going phrase by phrase, I started, like, there were moments I would get it dead on, you know. And the times that I didn't, I would just learn from it. Like, okay, well, why did he do that there? Because I don't, maybe this sounds paranoid, but like, I don't ever trust that something is just there, especially with Ravel. It's like, there's a reason.
Yeah,
It,
yeah, yeah.
it may be a conscious reason, and it may be a subconscious reason just from having done it for so long. So that's really kind of how I learned to orchestrate. I mean, I had some formal lessons eventually, but it was just staring, and going back to back and just learning just different ways of like categorizing gestures. I mean, what does the sustain pedal mean in the piano versus the orchestra? What does he do to create sustain pedal resonance? What does he do when the piano hands are far apart and it sounds beautiful with the sustain pedal, but in the orchestra it sounds crude and hollow because there's nothing in the middle? So I would just start to like, problem solution. I would start to kind of like file things away. And
What are some of the solutions for this particular problem?
I mean, depends on the dynamic, but basically the short version is closing up the hands, filling up the gap between the hands, and not in a drastic amount. I mean, in a tutti, at fortissimo, yes. I mean, literally closing up the overtone system,
Yeah.
but piano, yeah. I mean, if there are things far apart, sometimes just like a horn with a fiber mute in, so it takes the body away from the horn and just going through, and you just don't even notice it's there. He does that masterfully. There's a Debussy piece, I think Sarabande, that he orchestrated.
I saw your video on this.
Oh, you did?
Yeah.
Okay, so then he did this masterful thing with the horn, just to like kind of like the piano pedal, just lifting up, like there's a 20 millisecond release, and it's masterful because if you take it away, you can sort of hear a gap in the orchestra. So he sort of dovetails it. So it's like, okay, well, there's a trick or a recipe that I can use constantly when I'm orchestrating, when I may want to kind of fill in gaps and stuff. And it's beautiful because Ravel's not teaching me that. There's no book on Ravel's orchestration method, but it's all in his scores. You just have to be patient enough to go, why? Why is that there?
Thank you for checking out this episode. If you enjoy these conversations, please consider joining me on patreon.com/PabloHeld. My Patreon community helps me to pay for the running costs of this podcast and to develop it further into the future. There's 2 ways to join me there. The interview tier will give you access to lots of behind-the-scenes content. And also you get every episode before everybody else, so that's early access to episodes. The other option is the music lessons tier, which will give you everything from the interviews tier, plus 2 video lessons on different topics each month. Lead sheets, so whenever I transcribe a new song, you'll get it first. You'll be invited to listening sessions and much more. So these are 2 options for you to join me there. By doing that, you will be helping me to continue this podcast. So thank you, and let's get back to the episode. A lot of people don't go these extra steps. I mean, those are not just steps. Those are, that's a long distance to go because nowadays I feel like a lot of people are looking for the shortcut, like that. Do
Yeah.
these two things and you'll be Ravel, basically. You know, you can see many YouTube video thumbnails like
You
that.
sure can. Yeah. The cheat
But
code,
people
they
don't,
call it.
yeah,
Secret
exactly.
sauce. It's like
Yeah.
secret sauce is a life lived,
Hmm.
doing whatever it is that you're doing.
Yeah. Yeah.
How do you have a cheat code to play bass like Ray Brown? I mean, it's like, come on.
Yeah. Exactly.
Yeah.
Um, let's get back to that elegy orchestration that you just did.
Yeah, sure. I might have to turn it up in the mixer. Ba-da-da. And then the orchestra. Then the orchestra comes in there. So it was small enough as a fragment to just sort of do this for fun. And then the orchestrated piece, and just a disclaimer for listeners or whomever, this is note performer, so you're not getting
Yeah.
all of the nuance of a string orchestra. So turn the speaker back up. So, it's not finished. I'm still going to massage it with hairpin, with more dynamics and there's some tempo fluctuations. And there's just things in the piano, which we can get into, that hint at things in the orchestra. Like, for example, this rolled or broken chord here to me suggests it could, that there's something sort of ornamented, and you could internalize that as something sudden, like a forte piano, tremolo, like a sforzato down to pianissimo. you know you could look at that as a pizzicato, and just making it sort of a rolled chord, and same thing with arco. I could force them into a rolled chord by giving them double stops or something, and putting the little appoggiatura grace note, and just kind of
Oh
breaking
yeah.
the chord into like a sixth or something. So to me, something like that suggests it, because I look at orchestration, and Ravel talks about this. There's a difference between instrumentation and orchestration. And to Ravel, orchestration is sort of giving the illusion of the sustain pedal, bathing the sound in like sonorous fluid. Instrumentation is just, okay, very nice. I'll give that line to the flute and okay, I'm done. But you're not really giving the music a new lease on life. And of course, you don't want to be reharming the composer's music and adding counterlines, but there's just a way of using the orchestra to just give it a new lease on life, make things a little bit more idiomatic. Like for example, the dynamic piano. Well, maybe piano should be pianissimo in the strings. You don't have to be quite literal, I guess is what I'm trying to say. Sort of like translating one language to another, like maybe the best approach is to not be exactly literal, but to sort of give the essence of what's being said. So, the tempo's slow, he wants tranquil, and it's quiet. So for me, quiet could mean mutes, sourdine in the strings, sur la touche, playing over the fingerboard could make it even warmer and softer. Forcing the strings into like, Sul G or something, forcing them to play lyrically on one string could have a more veiled sound. So it's sort of like you're taking a very small instruction of piano
Yeah.
or, tranquil and just trying to exploit all of the things in the orchestra. I could, let's say there was more information happening here in the bottom octave. Maybe I just want to use two basses, which is something like Debussy does a lot. Sort of almost a rule, like if the music is pianissimo, he's using two basses and not the full bass section.
Why do you think that is? Oh, because it's less.
Just to moderate the
Yeah.
bottom octave. I mean, he does it a lot in like Pélias et Mélisande. I certainly think it's to just, make sure that he's not obscuring the human voice, just because back then, there's no microphone. But I just think it's a way to modify the low end. Ravel does that too. Sort of gets into another approach. Certain orchestration books sort of talk about one of something great, two of something bad, three of something better in the strings. That, one is a soloist, two, you get phasing and intonation issues, and three, it sort of choruses a little bit more and gives you more of like an ensemble sound. So some people would say, well, you're better using three basses if you're going to use two. I don't really find that an issue, in the bottom octave, but I think that's where you get into just preferences, So yeah.
I just wanted to say beautiful job, by the way.
Oh, thank you. I mean,
didn't get to say this because you were in it, but I just love also the way it jumps off the page. From the piano going to the strings, it's already such a big step, even with this crude audio setting,
Yeah. Yeah.
But it sounded beautiful.
Oh, thanks.
And I really love hearing familiar pieces in different instrumentations and settings.
Yeah.
Because it shows you something about the quality, initial quality of the content of the harmonic, melodic, rhythmic, and just the compositional content. But also it shows you something about the power and richness of the instruments, and how one instrument or several instrument and choices can totally change the vibe and the picture of the piece.
And it's also masterful, like his piano part. It's almost like an orchestral reduction, sort of.
Oh, yeah. It is.
Which just says a lot about Klaus Ogerman's, mind. He made this. I don't want to say easy. I think I did this in, 40 minutes or something.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, but 40 minutes, a lot of it just inputting it, by hand. But yeah, I mean, it was just very orchestral in nature, and just even the phrases, I mean, to me, if I were doing this for full orchestra, that's one phrase. But when it comes up here, this is a completely different phrase. This feels a lot more intimate. Like it could go to the woodwinds, because I sort of think the woodwinds are like the intimate voices
Mm.
of the orchestra. So, that's sort of built in. And this is another phrase. And, this could be just full on, tutti here,
Mm-hmm.
I mean, and really making it orchestral. And like, something I got from Mozart, which I love, is sort of not using something for a while. So it feels
Yeah.
very special because
And then it comes up.
he only had so many colors back then,
Mm-hmm.
So I mean, like for example, just bringing in the basses at the last bar would make them sound,
Mm-hmm.
ungodly and so special. And Ravel does that a lot too, especially in his later pieces where he'll literally just save the tam tam for the
Mm.
last bar,
Mm-hmm.
and it just sounds so exotic and so special because you just haven't heard it the whole piece.
Or when the flute comes in on the second movement of the piano concerto,
Mm-hmm.
that high C sharp or something, what
Mm-hmm.
it is, when it comes in,
Mm-hmm.
I think we haven't heard it before,
Yeah.
um, until that point, and always it always lights up the whole thing.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, withholding, it just
Yeah.
can make something so special. I think a lot of students that I have in the very beginning, I think that the more instruments they use, the more colorful they think it will be.
Mm.
And, in my humble opinion, the less color mixing you do, the more colorful. I mean, as you know, like you mix 5 colors and you get, I don't know what, gray or brown,
Mm-hmm.
you know. So, not to make it a country, but, Germanic, Teutonic or whatever tends to be a little more heavy and mixing a lot of colors, but
Mm.
it's also lush and it tends to be a lot more like contrapuntal in the string writing with voice crossing and
Mm.
stuff like that. And French tends to be a little more transparent, you know. And I don't know if this is true or not, but I sort of wonder, even like in organ music, you know, that German organ music is, highly contrapuntal, and I wonder if it's because of like the construction of churches being like wooden back then, and French churches and cathedrals being stone, that it's a little less contrapuntal because it just sounds better in the acoustic space.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know, but sort of a kind of a theory a little bit. And I just kind of try and mix all of the music I listen to, some of the transparency of French. I mean, certainly there's techniques in here just from studying Mahler or whoever,
Mm.
just voice crossing and yeah, I just try
I
and
love
listen.
these moments where it goes from, I think it happens 2 times, where it goes from, I think, from B major to B minor and then from A major to A minor,
Hmm.
like subtle changes.
Yeah,
But those are one of some of my favorite moments from this section.
yeah, I mean, it's hard to mess up because what
Yeah.
he wrote is so gorgeous. I mean, you could certainly make it more Hollywood lush and, start to, I mean, I wouldn't do this in the firsts, but, start to add octaves in and all that stuff and adding, but, I chose to be not literal, but, this is a moment that breaks down in the piece, that solo
Mm.
piano. So, I mean, some choices I could have made if I'm keeping it strings is, maybe making these solo voices, so what, one, two, three, four, five players or something like that,
Mm.
and then going back to tutti here, and I'm choosing to leave I mean, it's obviously not in the music, but, I'm choosing to not give the bottom stuff to the cello and really make where the bass comes in more,
A moment.
yeah, more of a moment. So there's a lot of micro decisions, like, here, for example, you have these repeated G's. And, I could make that a thing where I'm, turning them into, I'm turning them into, half notes and maybe putting, tenuto and kind of making it more of like a Luray kind of strokes that there's a little separation and there's pulse, or, I kind of chose to do the Ravel thing, which is that, just giving it a little bit of a mist. I mean, this E here is not being re-articulated.
Mm-hmm.
And I just sort of chose to do that here in the seconds that, and this would be very very apparent, like if this were in the woodwinds or something, having that as a single French horn with a mute, or a clarinet, that it just, that's like the sustain pedal stuff.
Mm.
So I sort of look for little moments like that. I mean, if I'm being really precious, which I do try and be, like honestly, this E is a little kind of heavy handed here. Like I might, depending on how many strings I'm imagining for this imaginary orchestration, I might want to use a half section and then bring the full section in here.
Mm-hmm.
So it has more, I don't know, just more weight, because sometimes you want to orchestrate in terms of fullness. Sometimes you want to orchestrate more intervallically.
Mm-hmm.
You know, so yeah, I try and be mindful about that stuff,
Mm.
a lot. So yeah, I mean, I'm pretty happy with it. I think it needs to be just massaged a little bit more with some, I started to put in some hairpins and some phrasing, and you notice obviously like the bowing changes. I mean, I know they can play this under one bow, but
Mm.
just, little things. I'm sure there could be some more little touches of things I could do to close up a harmony, something that's present in a certain octave that I choose to put in the middle or whatever. But I think it's kind of lovely, and
Yeah.
I didn't overthink it or anything like that. So
It's also in a ways, I love this. Just doing something like a short excerpt like that and working on it without having a super big goal or deadline.
yeah.
You know what I mean? Um,
Well, it's also just the fact that I like small canvases with lots of brushstrokes
mhm.
as opposed to the big, the big canvas. And I think a lot of the beauty of certain composers is what they choose not to write. And
Mm.
like Ravel never wrote a symphony on purpose, I think. And
Mhm.
so when I orchestrate, I love to find smaller things because I can really think about every detail. If this was 200 bars of piano, it's like I'm not going to exhaust myself in the fourth bar unless I want to spend 2 years on this,
Yeah,
you know.
exactly.
So yeah, this is fun. I sort of learned something in doing this.
Did you lift this from the that later recording that he did?
I did, yeah.
Because from my remembrance of this moment in the Bill Evans version sounds a little bit different,
Yeah, absolutely. It is
right?
different. Yeah,
There's different notes in the chords. I remember hearing an F sharp
yeah,
in the first E minor,
yeah,
like a ninth somewhere.
yep. Absolutely. Yeah, I don't know if he was. I mean, I sort of feel like because this was a tribute to Bill in this later recording that he was trying to just, capture the essence of what Bill
Hmm.
might have improvised while keeping it compositional.
Ah, interesting. So you're suggesting that in Bill's chart, maybe there was maybe only melody and chord symbols and a few voice leading things.
I I I think so. I mean, I know certainly in Symbiosis, like he would give him moments to just, give him a set of changes and let him do his
Yeah.
thing. I'm not 100% sure, but I maybe.
Mm, interesting. Very cool. I'm very, very interested now to, if you want to send me that thing later, that would be amazing. I would love to hear this.
Oh, the recording with the LSO?
Yeah, yeah,
Yeah,
yeah.
of course,
Yeah.
absolutely. It's gorgeous. I mean, I've learned a lot. What he does with the bass section is masterful because he's sort of almost, we were talking about Ray Brown earlier, like he's having the basses do some pizzicati stuff that's almost like what you would hear a jazz bass player do,
Mm,
but it's with a full section as opposed to
hmm.
like root, fifth, root, it really, it's like this beautiful through composed kind of thing. And yeah, it's gorgeous. Really
Great.
gorgeous. Yeah. So thanks
I
for
want to talk.
indulging me with that. I
Of
appreciate
course,
that.
not always. There's so many things that I want to talk to you about. It's like,
Yeah.
and I don't want to lose this topic, this thread of orchestration, and certainly Ravel and stuff. But one thing that is always on my mind when I watch your videos and check out what you're offering, which is a lot. You're putting so much out there, which
Yeah.
is
So
so valuable for all of us. This is so. I
thank
mean,
you.
thank you for doing that. But I'm wondering, like, because when you do so many different things, I wonder how the topic of orchestration translates to you playing guitar on a track.
Yeah. I think it definitely translates. Sometimes it might be with voicings, but I think it's more about like orchestral devices and stuff. I don't know. For example, me like in film music, you know how they have risers, like in Hans Zimmer and stuff like that, things to create tension. So taking the
No, sorry. What is a riser? Tell me what a riser
so a
is.
riser would be like a slow, gliss from the lowest note to the highest note, where you're not matching your stand partner. You're not trying to stay, you're sort of trying to stay like a quarter tone kind of away from each other. And it creates tension. And Hans would do that. I think they call it the Shepherd effect or something. But he would do that in gosh, what was it? Dunkirk maybe, where they're kind of like going in opposite directions. You've got like low to high and high to low happening, and eventually at some point they cross.
Mm.
So, things like that. So maybe that's just simply done by doing it on your guitar, a high, sort of unpitched tremolo, and you absolutely hear this in, R&B and stuff. But, when you have like an echoplex on, you're doing this kind of,
Oh yeah,
that's kind
yeah,
of to
yeah.
me the equivalent of, you know, violins. It's anticipation.
Hmm.
It's like holding your ankle and you don't really know what's happening. And that to me, when I hear that in the orchestra, like a tremolo held note or a forte piano, like in some Mahler or something, it's anticipation. It's like, wait, what's about to happen? So I
Hmm.
think I take those kinds of things into guitar. And maybe just the color of the orchestra, like the warm butteriness of French horns, maybe just trying to find something where maybe I'm strumming with my thumb and I'm on the neck pickup and I'm rolling the tone back and I'm kind of thinking more like how horns can just pad through something and just be butter, you
Can you show
know?
this?
I don't think I could really do it with this guitar, but just meaning, just it's not really going to work out, but you know,
Mm.
you know, low
Ah, I know
low
what you mean.
tremolo
Yeah.
strings. I mean, I'd have to have a delay to really just hit a chord. But yeah, just thinking of maybe the spectrum from low to high in the orchestra.
Mm.
I certainly think like when I'm orchestrating, you know, what spaces are missing and should they be filled in and stuff like that. And I tend to think the same way with writing guitar parts, that I'm just trying to think like an arranger and an orchestrator and write things and still have things be somewhat spontaneous or improvised so that they don't sound and feel like copy paste 4 bars
Mm.
over and over again. But I'd say the conception is certainly a little more orchestral. I mean, you can hear it in stuff like Barry White or the
Mm.
Love Unlimited Orchestra, because you'd have an arranger, like someone like Gene Page, maybe thinking about trombone solely, but giving it to 4 guitar players to play single notes and stuff like that. You know,
Mm.
what I'm not though is I'm not like super fancy with things. Like I'm not great at counterpoint. I can't just write fluid counterpoint or whatever. So I have a lot of limitations because of the way I learn and just because of some of the music I like listening to.
I mean, it seems to me like you know a lot about a lot of different music, and I want to know more about what happens if you have music on, maybe that you've known before or you're listening to something new. What happens if something grabs your attention?
Hmm, that's an interesting question. Um, I guess it sort of depends on the mood I'm in. I might want to just like sit down and pull it apart and kind of figure out what I just heard or something, or make a note of like, like for example, Charlie Hunter and I. Do you know Charlie?
I
So,
don't know him personally,
but
but
you know who he, yeah. So
hmm
we're doing a record together in February, and we've just been sending ideas back and forth.
hmm
And so he had just sent me something right before you and I started, and it was like 2 minutes, 3 minutes long, and something happened at 2 minutes and 21 seconds. It was like, whoa, he had just done some sort of like sort of I don't know, it was like whole steps up in like fourths or fifths or something, but it just grabbed my ear, and I was like, wait a minute, that's like you got to make that into a part.
mm.
So I don't know. I'd probably sit with that with my instrument and try and fool with it and figure out how I can make that more into a part. He just kind of had done it as like a passing, almost like a drum fill to something, but it
Ah,
was
cool.
special and different. So I don't know. Sometimes in those moments, I want to see what I can do with it. You know? Yeah.
And how did you? I mean, I guess maybe that's already the answer to the question, but how did you work on being able to hear what and understand what you're hearing? Like, how did you work on? Because in a way, I think that's the best ear training, right? You hear something and you want to learn it, but some things you can't hear or understand right away.
Yeah. Are you asking about certain colors in the orchestra or just like harmony and
Just anything.
anything?
It can be
Yeah.
a chord on a guitar. It can be a big harmony from an orchestra. But some
Yeah.
things we can't understand right away because we don't know yet what they are.
Yeah. Yeah. Um, the short answer is just I figured it out, and I'll elaborate obviously. And when I figure it out, I hear it every time. Just like when you and I talk and you say cat, I'm like, okay, three
Yeah.
letters, has a C. Like I don't have to think about it. I was really lucky when I was in my. Well, first of all, I started to play my instrument by ear. I mean, I learned by ear in the very beginning. Um, Not anything, and when I mean learn by ear, like being able to communicate maybe like a 5-year old, not dense harmony or anything like that, but enough to be like, mommy, cookies, like very primal kind of hearing. And that developed when I went to school. I did a year at Berkeley, and I had a teacher named Richie Hart. It's like a hard bop guitar player, friends with George Benson. He played in Lonnie Smith's organ trio, just from that school. Like, no, not talking about, he'd kick you out if you start to mention Lydian flat seven and chord scales. And, it was all, he had a different approach, and it was by ear. So when I met him, I had gotten very overwhelmed at school because I was being taught to internalize music in a way that I never did before. And not in a
Wow.
like, Ella, maybe you might want to think of it this way, but like the way you're doing this is wrong, and this is how you should do it. So it really messed with my whole like sense of self and equilibrium in a bad way, because sometimes you just play things and I'm not thinking about if there's a nine in it. I mean, I can sit and go, yes, there's a nine, but I'm not conscious of certain things. And so certain teachers I had was just a little more like, you have to know everything you're doing at all points in time or whatever. And it just made me not really want to play music, you know because
Mm.
I had started by ear. And so what was great with Richie, which I'm kind of being long-winded here, is he taught me how to hear more colors and chords and stuff like that, but by ear. So I would go to his, office, and, he loved, like Wes, for example, So he would teach me a chord solo, but he wouldn't go, okay, this is E minor 9/11, and we're going here and we're doing this. He would turn his back to me, and he would go, ba-boom, pling, and, he would say, play it back, and he would be patient with me. And he would tell, he'd cut me off sometimes. He goes, stop. He goes, you're thinking. Don't think, just react. So it was ear training. And he'd, say, like, find the top note. Just find the top note. Find the bottom note. Sing what you hear, strum the chord. Sing a note that you're hearing, find. So it was a lot of just sing, find it, sing, find it, sing, find it. And so I developed a chord vocabulary from having listened to Wes and Joe Pass and Johnny Smith, and, sort of the basic food groups, just like you have in piano with Bill and Hank Jones and, all your George Shearing voicing, like your food groups of speaking in the harmonic language. And that really helped. And then I met sort of my first real mentor, Spanky Alford, who played with D'Angelo and is sort of the godfather of like neo soul guitar stuff. And he was an ear player too. So when I got together to learn from him, he couldn't tell me this is a C major 9 sharp 11. He might say, I think it's a C6. So I just had an ear, and I would, so I had a great foundation from it, and, to be perfectly transparent, there's a lot I don't know. I don't
Same.
really know standards. I'm not a jazz musician, although I love jazz harmony and play it and orchestrate it, and love listening to it. But there's just a lot. I think a lot of what I can do is a result of what I can't
Oh yeah,
do.
I know this. I know this. I mean, we're always the sum of the things that we're spending a lot of time with, and also the things we neglect, sometimes consciously and sometimes we don't think about them.
Yeah.
But that also makes up your sound. I mean, that's also the beauty of it sometimes, like, because we can spend time with everything, right? I mean,
Yeah.
who can?
And we don't need to know every word in the dictionary or whatever thesaurus to be able to make someone feel something,
All right, yeah. It can sometimes even stand in the way.
Sometimes, yeah. I mean, sometimes things can sound just inaccessible to certain people. It's a little too much, and some people want to just be spoken to, and I mean this musically, but musically spoken to, kind of in a slow, patient, digestible way. And some of us may just want chaos, and some of us may want stuff that's so deep that we have to listen to it multiple times to even understand what we think we're feeling, or whatever, or something, which I think is why I love funk so much, and a lot of Black American music, because it just hits you in the chest. You don't have to think about a thing, you just
Yeah.
feel it immediately.
Yeah.
But yeah, I would say that's sort of how I learned to hear things, and going back to like shortcomings, or musical deficiencies. It's a lot easier for me to hear a 6-note chord voicing than it is to hear a monophonic melody, because I'm more enthralled with harmony, because I play more harmony, because I orchestrate, so I would hear some kind of dense voicing a lot quicker than if you played Happy Birthday. Not saying I can't hear Happy Birthday, but I could just hear the harmony quicker because I just go after it more. I'm listening to it more, Yeah.
But there's also the like when you break down some of the videos on your Instagram where you break down like full guitar parts, where it's more than just the harmonies. There's also the rhythm and the subtle things in there, like,
Yeah.
and I've noticed that when I transcribed over the years, like my ears opened up to all the subtle little things. Like at the first I think I have it, and then you're honest with yourself, like, but why doesn't it sound like what I'm hearing on the record?
Yeah.
and then you notice, oh, there's these subtle things where you can't even make out a pitch per se, like for some of those movements. Like, how did you work on that?
A few different ways. I think a lot of it had to do with being a touring musician and having to learn tours. And at that point in time, you're not, there's no stem separation software. No one's giving you stems to learn or a Pro Tool session. It's hey, here's the album, or not even just go on a, well, there wasn't really even social media then when I was touring, when I started touring back then. So I mean, you're getting a show CD and you're just listening with headphones on. I think
Yeah.
also just listening to certain albums that had a lot of nuance taught me a lot, like specifically D'Angelo Voodoo, and just
Oh yeah.
all the little subtleties. And, you can just listen to it over and over again. You're like, oh my God, there's a clavinet part I never heard. And I've been listening
Yeah.
to this for 5 years. So I think
Yeah.
that was like ear training in a way. And yeah, learning shows on a CD, and maybe someone sends you a live show and you can't hear the guitar player's part really well. And back then I used to do a little trick. I had Bose noise canceling headphones, and I would like yank the cord out a little bit and see if I could
Uh-huh.
put it at a phase,
Interesting.
so it would like, yeah. Now, I mean, they have software that does all of this stuff, and I do use it because why not? But I can hear it, without it. So yeah, there was just a lot of like this,
Yeah.
just like making a stupid face, and I think I hear this,
Yeah.
going back to the beginning of the conversation about spending time learning someone's style. That's certainly, if you know someone's style, you might know like, yeah, they're not going to do that. They're going to probably play it like this,
Yeah.
or they're only going to half pedal, or they're not using pedal at all. They're just, playing it more like an organ and holding notes, you just little things like that help
Totally.
get closer. I mean, if the goal is to approximate something on a record.
Oh yeah.
Sometimes it's not. Sometimes it's like, I don't care. That's the record. Play what you want to play on the tour. So yeah, a lot of ear training, but not formal ear training. Like there was a teacher where I grew up. It was a man named Charlie Banakis. Have you ever heard of him?
Yeah.
Yeah, so he grew
Yeah. Yeah.
up,
Yeah. Interesting.
very close to me. I took 2 lessons with him actually before he passed
How
away.
were the lessons?
They were wild. I mean, he was a deep cat, but also very just kind of blue collar. Like, hey, how you doing? Come on in. Hey, so what are we working on? But he was also just sort of like the oracle, and just,
Yeah.
And I remember his ear training exercise was, you play a cadence, whatever, 1 4 5 1 4 5 1 in the key of C, and you have a pencil, and you have to use the eraser side, A, so you don't damage the piano, but B, so you don't know if you're hitting a white key or a black key in terms of, distance. So, C, F, G, F, C, pling. And you just immediately had to be like sharp 11, F sharp. And he wasn't interested in you going, is it a sharp? Like he didn't want that. And
Yeah.
coincidentally, it was the same thing with my teacher, Richie. Like, stop thinking, just react. So he
Yeah.
wanted to just, and it was okay if you got them wrong over and over again.
Oh yeah.
It was just because, you're on the bandstand, like you don't have, it's that fast. So that was his way of doing ear training. And then, you build up to more than one note, and then and then you smash your arm on the piano like Rick Beato's kid, and you hear every note. But doesn't, someone said like, being great at reading music and having perfect pitch doesn't mean you're a great musician,
Oh yeah. Yeah. Totally.
So not putting that down, I don't know that I would want perfect pitch, but yeah, I mean, then you build up to a certain number of notes. And I guess that goes back to like, that's a little too scientific for me. I'd rather just listen to James Brown or whomever, and learn to hear that way. So to answer the second part of your question about hearing, I would just go after music that was very nuanced. Specifically with James Brown, a lot of people who aren't very familiar with it let's say a guitar player, might deduce it to like, oh, it's a D9 chord. Who cares? Like, big deal. I can play that in 2 seconds. But they don't hear all the nuance. They don't hear that this note here is not fully on and it's not a ghost note. There's like an in between, like you were saying earlier. There's an in between note, or maybe it's not, it's just a key being depressed, but you don't really, there's so much nuance. And like you, I would listen and transcribe, not by writing it, but by playing it or singing it back. And I'd be like, something doesn't sound quite right. Something missing. I'm like 85% there. And you just keep being patient with it, and then eventually music like reveals itself to you as a gift. And I remember specifically with James Brown, a lot of stuff was like, oh, that's a ghost note. That's why it sounds so clean and funky. I have my inverted guitar next to me, so this is not a great instrument for an example. But let me just find a decent guitar pick here. But there's a difference between. Can you hear that at all?
Yeah.
There's a difference between playing two notes, like, and versus I'm playing. I didn't even play a note. You got that note, but you thought you heard. You didn't. You heard.
Yeah.
But what I played was. So it's like all those little subtleties that separates, I don't want to say an amateur from a professional, but those little things that take it from I got the notes versus I got the phrase or something like that.
Yeah,
and
the
maybe
feel. Yeah.
yeah, and maybe that's a little more of an advanced thing where younger musicians maybe go, I definitely don't want to make it a color thing, so I won't, but I kind of want to say, can I just say what I want to say without getting canceled?
Always. Yeah.
What I want to say, coming from a white trans girl, is I feel like white people go after the notes and black people get the phrase. They get the notes and the phrase. And apologies, don't cancel me. It's just, it's a generalization, but that there's a nuance, there's a subtlety, there's a something that's felt and maybe not heard that a lot of people don't seem to pick up on, that they go, I got the notes, and they think they got it because they can't hear it. And that's okay. It's like, if you don't know better, you can't do better if you can't hear that nuance. And there's things I couldn't hear. And same with you. You're just not ready to hear them. There's tons of shit I can't hear,
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
But don't you also, I mean, do you sometimes I don't hear stuff, and then I stop trying and go get a glass of water
Yeah.
or go for a walk, come back, and I can hear it right away.
Yeah.
No problem.
I try and do that whenever I can in music. If I'm recording guitar parts, anything, can I just have short little breaks? And I know you know this, but because you do this way more than I do, but sometimes it's like the thing that's not quite right is because you had 5 notes in the chord and it's just 4.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's like there's too much information there rather than not enough.
Yes.
Yes.
Yes. But with the great players, the way they play it, it sounds richer because it brings out more overtones.
Yeah.
And then that creates the illusion of being like a huge chord. But it's actually just, I always mention Herbie's comping on Nefertiti, the Miles Davis track, where I always thought like, whoa, these chords are so big.
Yeah.
This is incredible.
Yeah.
And then I started really paying attention to what it is. And first couple of voices that he plays are 3 notes. But the way it also goes together with the bass and the melody, sometimes we hear notes that don't even belong to the instrument we're trying to, lift,
Sometimes it might be like the overtone of a kick drum, especially in jazz,
Oh, yeah. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. I mean, I think of like my friend Bill Frisell, like he can play thirds and sixths and bend the neck, and
Oh yeah.
it's a whole cloud of sound.
Mm-hmm.
Not that he doesn't play dense or rich chords, but I mean, it's kind of funny, especially in guitar music, that like you can be Kurt Cobain and play a fifth and rule the world, or AC/DC, and it's massive. Two notes, just a fifth, you know? And Bill with thirds and sixths and other intervals that, you know, two notes and three notes goes a long way in music, but certainly in guitar, you
Oh
know.
yeah.
I'm kind of skeptical if I'm playing something with more than a few notes, at least for like R&B and comping and rhythm. It's kind of like, do you really need that bass note?
Mm-hmm.
Motown, for example, if you study the guitar music, they almost never played the bottom string on the guitar, unless they're doubling James Jamerson, because it's staying the hell out of the way of James so that he's
Mm-hmm.
got the bottom. So if it's a G major chord, why do I need to play the root? The bass player's playing it. I'm going to voice it, 5-1-3-5
Mm. 5-1-3-5. Okay.
instead of 1-1-5. Well, you got to remember too, guitar, we're
Mm-hmm.
not doing close position,
Mm-hmm.
you
Yeah, yeah,
know.
yeah. It just took me a minute just to yeah,
Yeah.
but
So yeah, a lot of times, we're just leaving the root out of the
mm-hmm.
chords. Maybe not the young guys today, but back then, yeah, yeah,
I'm wondering when you get into funk, and I'm certainly not an expert or anything, but I feel like because I think I got into funk through a detour or through a little through checking out Herbie and Miles, who were checking out Sly
yeah,
and James Brown. So I would check out all the albums that they probably and for sure listened to. And that gave me answers about those guys, about Miles and Herbie and those cats. But of course, it all showed me this great big world.
yeah.
And I don't know if I can put this into words so easily, but I feel like there's a gateway into funk through the rhythm and the feel, but also the thing that I hear guitar players in James Brown's music or Sly playing. There's also a content that gets you to more funky territory than it's not just the rhythm, you
Sure.
know. And I'm wondering what your thoughts are on this.
I mean, I think a lot of things. I think it's that everything is being conceived as a drum part,
Mm.
and it's being conceived rhythmically as opposed to harmonically. I think it's the space in the music, how much space there is. I think it's in the repetition, how it becomes mantra like. I think it's in the musical generosity of the parts. There's a song, it's like um, the I don't have my regular guitar here, but the rhythm goes da 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 dee da da dum 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 da 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 dee da da. It's like an E flat 7 chord or something. But one guitar player is going da 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 da. Second guitar player goes dee da da, and then the
Mm-hmm.
bass player goes boom boom boom. So da 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 dee da 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 boom boom boom. Like they're not even
Ah.
playing at the same time, but it creates one phrase. I don't know. I'm fascinated about that music because it's a lot about just placement, you know.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and it
Mm-hmm.
just I don't know. Yeah, I mean, I live it, just the
Mm-hmm.
way you live your music and jazz music, and yeah, I can't go a day without thinking about it or
Mm-hmm.
wanting to play it.
What was the last thing that you checked out and that you've been working on?
Well, it's funny because I always talk about Sly's "There's a Riot Going On" album.
Oh
I
yeah.
always just listened to it. I never really like tore it down to the studs, and so I've been kind of going back to that and listening a little bit deeper. Which I'm sure when you mention, Herbie
That's what I checked
Headhunters
out.
and
Yeah.
Bitches Brew and shit like
Mm-hmm.
that, it leads you to There's a Riot Going On or Stand.
Thank you for letting me be myself.
Yeah.
Yeah, that I think that blew my mind when I
Yeah.
first heard, like how that felt
Yeah.
and how seemingly
Do I have a
all the
guitar here? I
instruments
do. Sorry, I'm listening.
go into sort of have a different feel about things, but then they have the same feel about things. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like,
Yeah, and kind of goes back to the two note thing, you know. Oh, I'm not in standard tuning. I was like, what the hell just happened? I'll have to tune up while I talk to you. Sorry, Sly. Yeah, I mean, that riff is like basically just, you know, two notes. Now I know. I was in Curtis Mayfield's black key tuning. I was like, what just happened? Yeah, I mean, two notes. Two notes and a lot of feeling. I mean, I think for me with Sly's album, with There's a Riot Going On, I love because it's just dark and greasy, and, you know, you can hear that he's just erased the tape a lot. You know, the tape is degraded. You can just sort of hear the overdubs, and that it's just kind of gone through a lot of different iterations of the music. There's just I don't know. There's just, I mean, and of course, there's the social message of what was happening in the world. But if I just talk about the music in the feel, I don't want to say sloppy, because sloppy implies that, you know, someone, you know, is not
doesn't care.
doesn't care and whatever. But there's just a greasiness, a looseness that, you know, is sort of how I play. I don't want to play right dead on the transient, you know, on the beat. Yeah, the thank you. The you know.
yeah. What's that? What's that song? Dum 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 dum.
Oh, the
Dum, I think I was talking about that one also. Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
there's actually two parts. Sly's just going or something like that. And but the other part is just going. They don't move off of that chord, but Sly's sneaking in that. Yeah.
What's that? The ninth or something of the minor chord?
The sixth.
Oh, the sixth. Okay. Yeah.
Yeah. What is that? Flat 7, 9, 5, up to the 6. Yeah.
Beautiful.
That's the essence of Greece. That's the Bible. You know, yeah, it's like there's just an effortlessness. James Brown's funk is different. You know, it is a lot cleaner. There is more, I don't want to say rigid, because that means I'm trying to say stiff, because it's not, but, you know, it's a little bit more like well-kempt funk, as opposed to I didn't brush my hair, which is kind of what's going on today, you know. Yeah, there's just a lot in there, you know, to pull apart.
And you love to play along to records, right?
I play along to records, and a lot of times I just play by myself, you know, like putting on that groove and then playing along and then just turning it off and just sitting there like that, trying to hear the whole band in my head. Yeah, and just pulling out different parts and stuff like that.
And what does it mean to you to lock in with a drummer and a bassist?
Like, how do I log in, or what?
Yeah, I'm fascinated with like how you work on time, basically.
Yeah, that's a good question. A lot of what I do, you know, I say this a lot, but I just play drums on the guitar. You know, I don't, I really like, yeah, okay, fine, you know, we're in A and it's flat seven to root and all that crap, you know, but I just kind of, like you can feel, you know, you're moving.
Yeah.
Like that's kind of a lot of what I practice is just finding, you know,
Yeah.
but that's just straight up, you know, sorry. It's just drums.
Yeah, totally.
There was a thing I wrote for that band Wolfpack, and Nate Smith was playing drums, who's one of my favorite drummers, and he just kind of had this like, you know, it wasn't, he wasn't doing eighth notes or whatever. And I remember when they sent me the song, there was no harmonic stuff going on. It was just a bass line, a vocal, cantus firmus, you know, and drums basically. And I just remember like locking in to his drums by just simply going, just grooving, you know, and then I, you know, but that's conceived from drums. I mean, sure, it's whatever, G7 and A7 and C major, but it just starts with drums. And that's how I practice it, is I kind of look at it like, that's my drummer. And I just try and get something going that feels comfortable and that makes me feel good. And then I think about adding in this hand, whatever it is. But I kind of just look at it like, and maybe this is incredibly different than piano pedagogy, but it's like if I can't get that to sound good without notes, how is dropping notes in going to make it feel any better? You know, it's only going to complicate things, and maybe I don't have control of the duration of the notes, you know, and I'm just adding more things to the equation. So when this feels inevitable and feels really good, I sort of, going back to like the foreplay with Ravel, I sort of feel like I've earned the right to now put this into the equation and add something. So practicing rhythm for me is just a lot of that, or just taking phrases and playing them over and over again. One, because I enjoy it. Two, because the more that I play a phrase, I feel like the more I can chisel away from it, you know? Like there was something, I played Erica Badu's band, and we were doing this P-Funk song, I think Mothership Connection. Something like that, whatever. And there was a B section, and I don't remember, you know, some kind of, you know, F minor, B7, B minor 7. And I had just come up with this part, and I think the first night, sorry. I think the first night I might have played by the time I was done on the third night, it had turned into like, And I would sit there like, does it sound better to go, you know, or, or, I think I had gotten that, and then maybe the third night I added, and you know, or all those little things. But by saying I'm just going to sit here and do this, the more and more I play it over and over again, each loop, you know, I just try and put something in.
Yeah.
So that's
Yeah,
why
you're cementing the what is it, the building blocks of that phrase.
yeah, like
And
building
by
it up.
doing that, you get more brave with trying things
Yeah.
and finding just the
and
interesting.
taking joy in the subtleties, like rather than it's and is it, or would it be better hammering, which is soulful too, as opposed to or is it, so you've got, that's one, then you've got, that's two, and then you've got, that's three. That's like three different tiny little approaches. So I don't really like playing single lines or consider myself a lead guitar player, but that's my improvisation. That's my Herbie left hand playing major sevens in different keys. Well, you know, or whatever. That's where I dance, you know,
Yeah.
and feel free. Yeah, and I think it just comes from the repetition of it, you know. That's what I have a hard time with if I were a jazz musician, which I'm not, is there's so many moments that are just, they're gone. It's it. It's done. And I like that this just keeps happening over and over and over again, and it's meditative, and it allows me to look at it through different angles and stuff like that. You know, which is why I love listening to jazz and will never be a jazz musician, you know.
Yeah, I mean, there's so much music that we love that we don't play, right? I mean, I listen to a lot of music, and a lot of it, the majority of music that I listen to, I don't play. But what we do is maybe the mixture of things that we love to do, or that we get, after a while, get called for,
Yeah, that's
which is
actually,
a selection of those,
that's
you
a
know, those
really
favorite things.
important lesson I learned a lot later on in life. I think I had a guilt when I was younger that if I listened to something, I had to know how to play it. Like I love, you know, for me when I was in college, Kurt Rosenwinkel, Next Step, Hardcore, like those two albums, that was my era, you know, and just being enamored by the music and, oh, well, he does this and, you know, and as I got older, I'm like, just listen to him, bitch. Like he sounds, you don't have to go after that. That's that man's life. That's his life of playing music. And I don't know if it was a Berkeley thing of them trying to instill being a well-rounded musician and being able to play a lot of different styles. I don't know where that sort of guilt came from of, you know, thinking that you have to go after everything. And sometimes
can't.
just
You
listening
can't.
is just take joy in it, you know. Yeah.
Yeah, and being real about the things that you really appreciate and that really touch you.
Yeah, I think it just has to be a lifetime of what you do. I mean, music's a one-way journey, and, you know, we all go on these twists and turns. You know, maybe in 2 years you might be writing for a kazoo ensemble. You know, it's like you never know where music takes you, and you know this. But like, yeah, there's a balance between being open to move where music is exciting your heart versus
Are there
like
kazoo ensembles? That's what I want to know now. Now I want to hear the guitar part that you just played, but with
with all
six
kazoos. Yeah,
six kazoos.
yeah, yeah. Kazoos playing, you know, bach chorales and stuff
Oh
like that.
yeah,
Yeah,
let's make it happen.
I'm sure someone's done it,
Yeah.
which is the sick or amazing part. Yeah, it was just a lesson I learned later on in life. And even I have a lot of students, and some, I'd say most are sort of, I guess transient's the wrong word, but one lesson and I never see them again. And a
Hmm.
lot of people like my feel, and they want to know how I do what I do. And I can tell some of them it's very transactional, just like give me the, like we
Give
talked
me the
about in the
secrets.
beginning,
Yeah.
give me the secret sauce, and let me just do this thing real quick. And a big part of it is like I value that. It's my aesthetic, I value rhythm. So I don't know, where other people, it's a little bit more like, I guess, yeah, my time sucks, like I should probably check this thing out. It's like almost like they feel guilted into doing it. It's like, you know I don't, there was an amazing Alice Coltrane clip. Actually, I wonder if I can play it. I had just found it the other day.
Oh yeah.
She's talking to Branford Marsalis, and let me see if I can find it in like 10 seconds. If I can't, then I'll just
Take your time.
okay. But yeah, she's talking to Branford about it, and she just talks about that. I'm not telling you anything you don't know, but you have to live it. It's a
Hmm.
life lived. Otherwise, it's a copy of something. Actually, I think I have it inside my Insta saved as a draft. I honestly, I was going to post it, and I sort of wondered if it was going to come across as preachy, but somehow in that culture. Maybe you didn't have to be born into it, but you start again. Being somehow in that culture. Maybe you didn't have to be born into it, but you had to live it. You had to experience it. Right. You can't be on one shore listening and then say, "Oh, I can do that." It's a good copy, but it's not the real thing. And it's a lived experience. So with what
Yeah.
you do, or Kurt Rosenwinkel or Bill Evans, or what I do, it's a lived, it's a life of doing it. It's not just a you know the two things to sound like Bill Frisell or Ella Feingold or something.
Yeah.
It's a value of how you want to live your life, and emote and make, like for me, because I can, because I know me, like the value and the life lived, part of the way I play is because I'm treated in the world as a trans woman. And another part of it is because of how I'm treated as a trans woman, wanting to make people feel good with music and through rhythm.
Mm.
Like that's a life, it's a life lived, it's a value. It's not just listen to James Brown. There's a reason behind it.
Mm. That's
So
beautiful.
thank you. I mean, it's a truth, but it's a
Yeah.
hard truth because some people, yeah, some people don't want to be musically generous or be good listeners. Some people just have something to prove, which is okay, but and maybe in a selfish kind
Oh
of
yeah.
kind of way.
But we kind of always hear that. I mean, it always shines through, I think.
Yeah,
When somebody's not honest or wants to please or put down or
yeah,
whatever, it's
yeah,
there's there's also the way of showing off which is where you play down to people,
yeah.
you know.
Or, Charlie Hunter talks about this a lot, like overt versus covert chops. And I
Mm.
love covert chops where you're not trying to impress anyone, but what you're doing may move someone, just the feeling, like it's technically I'm trying to think how to say this. Like just by having good feel, like Questlove, he's not
Mm.
doing anything flashy, but he has covert chops
Hmm.
by the timing being fucking impeccable, by the
Yeah.
placement, by like maybe the Mozart thing of, saving certain things, or,
Hmm.
that's covert to me. It's very subtle and felt. And
That's
I
beautiful.
loved when Charlie said that. He was like, yeah, covert versus overt chops. I was like, oh yeah. Wow. Yeah. Ray Brown maybe. Covert, I mean obviously there's over, you know, like, okay, that's very fucking impressive. But, you know, I think there was a video of him talking like, you know, you're going to make a living, root and fifth and having a good
Yeah,
feel. And, you know,
yeah,
it's like, that's
that's a great
covert.
one.
It's just, yeah.
Yeah, and it goes unnoticed seemingly in the first moment, but you know, for a lot of people. But if you listen closely, that's
Yeah.
really what gets you the gig also.
Yeah. That's true.
You were playing with this guitar that where the frets are kind of diagonally at some point.
Oh, yeah. That's Charlie's instrument.
Yeah.
Yeah. The
Can you
high.
show this instrument a little bit and talk about it?
Oh, man. It's buried in the other room, but the problem is it
Okay.
would take a minute to set up because there's two outputs and one goes to a, but I can show you the inverted tuning one. But yeah, I can talk about that for a sec though. So Charlie had developed this. I don't know if it was from in his days of busking in Europe, but he used to have an 8 string guitar and it had two outputs. So half of the instrument was bass and the other half
Mm.
was guitar strings. So he'd have an output going to the bass and an output. And he's kind of the perfect example of the covert chops in that what he plays is so musical that it sounds like one piece of music. And it doesn't sound like this kind of, you know, sometimes you see some of these TikTok guitar players and like tuning the tuning peg and tapping, and it's kind of like, look at me, look at me, look at how much stuff I can cram in 90 seconds.
Yeah.
Like Charlie can do those things, but in a musical way where he's not trying to impress you. He's literally just playing the song, you know. And Charlie has a lot of, you know, interdependence in what he plays and stuff like that. And so he was nice enough. Him and I have, you know, been friends for a couple of years, which still fries my brain because I've looked up to him and, you know, um, it's cool that he wants to be my friend or make music with me. So he let me borrow his instrument for a while and I just really took to it. And this may sound a little overly poetic, but I like dreamed of playing that instrument. Not
Yeah,
for a
beautiful.
living, but it just seems so fascinating,
Hmm.
you know. And yeah, I've had a lot of fun with it. And I have to give it back at some point in time, which is a real drag.
I love this video where I kind of I think you named it trying to sound like an
Oh,
acoustic
like an
bass.
upright bass, yeah.
Oh, I love that.
Oh,
I
thank you.
watched this on repeat.
Yeah, yeah, I think
So
it,
beautiful.
yeah, yeah, it's a really fun instrument. And it's one of those instruments that it's, which is not a bad thing, but it's addicting. And I'll just
Mm.
start writing on it and playing it every day, and then I'm not touching my own instrument. What's really wonderful about it is because it has, you know, two different outputs, it really forces you obviously to be mindful of the bass, you
Hmm.
know, whether you're literally playing a bass line or just hitting a bass note within a chord or something. So I noticed after a couple of weeks when I would pick up a regular guitar, I was way more attentive to what was happening in the bottom octave with just wanting to
Hmm.
put a touch more movement, not playing like a walking bass line, but you know how there's just certain pianists that, like D'Angelo's one where his left hand is just really active and funky and you know, so it allowed me to hear things in a certain way I hadn't heard them before by playing
Hmm.
that instrument. Yeah, it's really cool.
Did you also do the inverted tuning on this one?
Sort of tried it. I didn't, which we can talk about because inverted tuning comes from
Yeah.
Chris, who you've had
Yeah, we
on.
need to talk
Yeah,
about it.
yeah,
Yeah.
who I absolutely adore. I took a portion of inverted tuning and put it on Charlie's instrument, but I
Hmm.
didn't flip the strings upside down just because of the way the instrument is built. Like the frets are fanned, and it has something to do with scale length and tension of a string. So
Hmm.
I just don't think you could simply reverse it. Like it just, I don't think the instrument would
And it's not
want.
yours, so you don't want to break it.
Well, I know he would. I wouldn't wreck it, but and I know he wouldn't care. But yeah, and it's just having the bass very close to you, you know, boom, 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 and being able to pluck just makes more sense. And having the high strings here and the bass. So basically, if you're playing bass strings, you're kind of grabbing them more, here rather than thumb and index, which is where you want that more meaty kind of thing. I mean,
Yeah, that
maybe
makes
if I
sense.
tried it, it would, be amazing, but I don't know. Because even with inverted tuning, which I can talk about, like even that, I'm not really playing bass lines. It's a little bit more just like, it's like a monophonic instrument, I'm not trying to bring out different things. But yeah, the story on this is it's a really cool story. And Chris is one of the most musically generous people I've ever met. So basically, I was playing upside down, just a regular, like taking a regular guitar and flipping it upside down. No special tuning or anything. And Blake Mills, who's a friend of mine, sent me a message at some point in time, like, oh, like, I love what you're doing playing upside down. It's killing. Have you ever tried this tuning, inverted tuning? I was like, no. He gave me the pitches, and me being me, of course, I like didn't listen and tuned it wrong by accident. And I had done some stuff. I'm like, what do you think? And Blake was like, it's cool, but it's not inverted tuning. And so then I kind of figured it out. And I just sort of took it and ran with it, and I love it. So for those that don't know, like on a guitar in standard tuning, from low to high, it's E, A, D, G, B, E. So normally there would be a low E string here, and then a low A, and then a D string, a G string, a high B string, and a high E string. So what inverted tuning does is it keeps E, A, D, G, B, E. It keeps the intervallic relationship the same. It just, instead of low to high, E, A, D, G, B, E, it's high to low. So if I demonstrate, can you hear that at all?
I can hear it a little bit. Yeah.
So if I pluck the strings on, if I play the strings on a guitar, this is my low E. Can you hear that note?
Yeah.
So here's my high E. Now if I hit my low A, here's my high A. Hit the D string, it's the same on this. Hit the G string, it's the same on this. I hit the high B, it's a low B. I hit the high E, it's a low E. So the intervallic relationship is the same. So if I play it, excuse me. I don't know, what is that, like an E minor 11 chord or something like that? And let me just tune it a little bit. So, and you could probably maybe tell me a little bit better about this, but what it does is it sort of flips the overtone series on its head, so that a lot of my roots and thirds and fifths and flat sevens and stuff like that, typically in standard tuning, are on the bottom of the instrument towards the bass strings. And all of my colors on the tree is on my high strings, which to me sort of adheres to the overtone series, I'm assuming.
Mm-hmm.
With this, it's the opposite. So all of my colors are on the bottom strings. So if I were to play like a 2-5, and I don't know if you can play bass notes, but like if I were to play, I don't know, a 2-5 in C or something, I can get a lot more colorful close position. That's my 2. That's my 5. Here's my 1. Or obviously I'm making alterations on the 5, but excuse me. It's very colorful. So you're not really getting the, 2 5 1, you're not really getting
Mm-hmm.
that. You're just getting all of the color. And I'm able to get stuff that you guys get that looks like this. That's the easiest thing in the world to play. Like 7 1 3 5, a beautiful major seven voicing, like B C E
Yeah.
G.
Mm-hmm.
Gorgeous. Bill Evans all day. On guitar, it's like, it's like this. It's so uncomfortable. But on here, all of those kind of Shearing, Nat King Cole, Bill Evans things,
Mm-hmm.
they're a lot more within your reach. So this tuning that Chris, invented, which I think he was using it more in a songwriting kind of, way. I took it and just chose to, play funk on it,
Mm.
because I could get, you can't get that chord on guitar. So I could
Mm.
just get, it was like the perfect thing for me. I could get color that I loved in like Klaus Ogerman, you know.
Yeah.
Um, you're not getting those chords in standard tuning. Just you're not.
Yeah. You don't hear them on guitar
Yeah,
so often.
you're not getting them. So it's sort of it was like home for me because it gave me the colors that I heard that I could never grab, and I had sort of just had to be like, okay, well, this is what it is on guitar. It's kind of just like, hey, kiddo, sorry, I'm your dad. Like, this is the best it's going to get. Like, just like, sorry, you know. So it just gave me this gift of harmony that I wasn't even looking for. Initially, when Blake had suggested it, I liked playing upside down because of my friend Jeffrey Lockhart, who's like the funkiest person I've ever heard in my life. And I had taken some lessons from Jeff, but I mean, he's more of a friend. And he just plays upside down. And there's something about hitting the strings on the high part first that it's kind of like on a turntable, you know, as opposed to low to high. It's a different sound. It might be subtle to some people. So that was the impetus for wanting to go to inverted tuning, was really the rhythm first, but then I started to excavate the color and the harmony. And what was so fun was that no one was playing it other than Chris, but which is funny because Chris lives like 40 minutes from me and we've never met. And
You've never met?
we've talked on the phone a bunch, and
Yeah.
texted, but we've never met in person. And so it's not like I could go to YouTube or buy a book or listen to a record. I was on my own to go, where do you find D minor 9? Like, I mean, I know literally that the shape on standard might be that, but that's a very different way to play D minor 9. It's just the chords get, flipped on their head. So I had to just sit here and find stuff, and that was really fun. And not to relate it to being a trans person, but I had started living my life as who I actually am without a roadmap, and this tuning sort of presented itself at the same time of discovering who I am.
Wow.
So it was really fortuitous, or whatever the right word is, that it just, those things happened at the same time. And it also gave me a sound. I mean, there was a part of me that, because of transitioning, I didn't care what I sounded like. I just wanted to emote. And I think that's sort of the cliche thing of like, oh, I sounded like me when I stopped trying to sound like someone else, or I fell in love when I stopped looking for it. So a part of it was
Right? I
that.
mean, there's a truth to that. So,
There is. Another
mhm,
part was just being me and going, man, I don't want to sound like anyone else. You know,
mhm,
before it was maybe if I sound like someone else, I can hide who I actually am, or I can get the validation if I sound like this person because they're
right.
beloved or whatever. But for me, being me, it was more. And coincidentally, today's like the 4 year anniversary of me being me. And
Congrats.
thanks. It just was
Congrats.
like I don't want to sound like anyone else, and so
Hmm.
Blake via Chris Weisman. Is it Weisman or Weisman? I never remember.
Well,
Or was
I
it
always say
Weissman? And
Wiseman.
yeah,
I say Wiseman,
yeah.
but you have to
Sorry,
ask
Chris. I
him
never knew the
again.
difference if
Yeah,
it was
sorry.
Weisman or Weissman. Um, but you know, it was this gift, and just to talk about Chris for a second, I had been playing like that for a while, and I started to get a little bit of visibility, and you know, people interviewing me and stuff, and I had called Chris and I said, you know, I always want to give credit where credit is due. So tell me, like, you know, what do you want me to call the tuning and how do you want me to discuss you and bring you up and all this stuff. And I had played him some stuff and he said, like, the most beautiful thing and gave me the most beautiful gift. And he was like, Ella, you know, I just believe some things in music, even though they might be created by the creator, aren't meant for them. And he's like, inverted tuning was meant for you. He was like, I
Oh,
believe that it was created for you to have it. And I love what
beautiful.
you're doing. And he's like, you know, it's yours. Like, you know, I was like, you know, it had me tearing up because I just, you know, didn't want to like leave him out in the interviews that I was doing. And it was just the sweetest thing anyone's ever said, you know. It was really, he's a really special guy. Um,
Yeah, but you're like that as well. You like to share as well
I
and show
do.
people, and you don't hold back,
Yeah.
and you're not like, I'm not going to show you what I'm doing over here. Like, you enjoy showing people about your journey and about what you've come to know and to live, and that helps other people on so many levels. That's
Yeah,
beautiful.
thank you. I mean, yeah, it is cool how Chris and I are maybe similar with generosity, and that I
Hmm.
got to receive a gift after maybe putting a lot of gifts out into the world or whatever. Yeah, you know, I think for me, it's I just suffered for a lot of years, and I know that music can be a powerful, beautiful, uplifting thing that makes people want to live. And so I just want to share because people have been generous with me coming up as a
Mm.
musician. And it's my way, it's the only way I know how to put love back into the world
Yeah.
other than trying to be a good person, you know?
Hmm.
And if I'm being really honest, as a trans woman and being, you know, villainized and dehumanized in the media, it's sort of a little bit of a way to be like, see, we're not bad people. We're just
Yeah.
people that just want happiness just like you do. And hopefully I can show you my humanity by showing up every day and asking you how you're doing and teaching you
Hmm.
something. And I don't know if it was Picasso that said something like the meaning of life is to find something you love and to give it away or something like that. But I really believe,
That's nice.
yeah, I really believe that. So yeah. So it was cool with inverted tuning, just that, you know, by way of Blake and then to Chris. And it's something I would do a lot more. It's hard, excuse me, it's hard just because it can also alienate people a little bit because they don't play in the tuning. And
Hmm.
sometimes they just want, you know, like, all right, Ella, show me some shit, you know. And they, you know, it's like someone putting your tuning in temp, you know, I don't know, some quarter tone tuning, and you're like,
Hmm.
all right, well, that doesn't look like a minor nine anymore.
Yeah, I would freak out if the C wouldn't be where I know it to be.
Yeah,
I would freak out.
yeah,
I'm sure it would do interesting things, but I'm so used to to just hearing the note where it actually is.
Yeah.
You know, I'm very spoiled with this instrument because it's so plain in a way.
Yeah.
Like you get to see where it is and you write it down where it is. Whereas in other instruments, it's not always there
Yeah.
where you write it down, or it's not always you play something, but it's actually something, you know,
Yeah. You're
it's
pushing a
different with
button.
my
It's
instrument.
not doing the thing it says on the button, eject, and
Yeah.
it's not ejecting. You're like, what's going on?
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
it's but it forces you to think in a different way, and I think that's maybe one of the beauties of the instrument. Like we lack the entire orchestra at our fingertips that you guys have, and we lack close position, beautiful, clustered harmony, which you guys have. But we are a reduction of the orchestra. We're the cliff notes of music, and yeah, tuning, bending notes, inflection, the nuance, it's a gift that the instrument has, you know.
I love that story of you and Chris and what he said to you.
It was so, I
I'm
mean,
still
yeah, no,
still thinking about it, and also like I feel like that's the way that music progresses.
yeah,
Like one person maybe finds something, shares it with the next, or that other person finds out about it. But not all people think about one thing the same way. Like we all have different views on it. We are all unique in that way. Like you look at something that Chris looks at, and you say, sure, but then we could try this,
yeah.
and now I'm curious, like, did you guys go back and forth, and did you maybe show him stuff where you like, did you try this?
I didn't. I was fascinated to know what he sounded like because I've never heard anyone play inverted tuning but me. So I was just fascinated, like, what could this possibly sound like? Now the cat is out of the bag, and a lot of people are doing it, and it's cool. I mean, I think a lot of people are sort of trying to do what I do, which is beyond flattering. And then there's other people that are, finding their way with it. Chris had sent me some clips. I think he had done a version around midnight, and I was just like, it was wild. And he had sent me some of his original compositions, like, oh yeah, I think that one's inverted and that one is. And he, of course, being the sorcerer that he is, has other tunings and stuff that he told me. I'm just like, of course you would, just like, who thinks of that? Um, you know, but I don't think he played anything for me over the phone. I know he loved what I was doing. He was just like, Jesus, that sounds like a keyboard. Like, how are you doing that with your left? I was like pulsing on some chords or something, and
That was actually what I meant, like that you then in return showed him things
oh
that you found
yes,
out on them.
yes, yeah, yeah. I mean, not literally like, okay, it's F and B, but yeah, that he just was like, I didn't conceive of it that way, and I think it's so cool what you're doing with it. And that's it's part of the reason I love music is that we have these influences and people that inspire us, and hopefully we're inspired by the energy of what they do, and we do something different with it, and we further it, and I love that. I mean, going back to Charlie Hunter, he always says, don't seek them, seek what they sought, you know
Yeah,
so I just love that maybe one day someone might be inspired by me, but they'll go, oh, Ella loved Spanky Alford and Wawa Watson and
yeah,
Klaus Ogerman, and then you get to see how I took those influences and moved them, I don't know if forward's the right way, but in a different way.
yeah.
How do you
In the
take
way that only you can.
yeah, yeah. How do you take the harmony of Bill Evans, who maybe got that from Ravel or Debussy or Poulenc or whoever, and he did it in a more delicate, spacious way. And maybe you're taking that and playing it in a more violent way with doubling the cluster in the pinky, or just some kind of something. It's. I think that's what we're supposed to do is move it forward. You know.
On your Instagram page, you shared a photo of you with Blake and Pino Palladino
Oh
and
yeah.
a drummer whose name I forget. I'm
Oh,
sorry.
that was with Jimmy Jam. the legendary music producer of Jimmy Jam and Terry Lewis, who did like all of Janet Jackson's hits. I mean, I don't know if anyone's had more hit records than Jimmy Jam and Terry Lewis. You know, yeah, he's amazing. Yeah, that photo got a lot of likes because it was just like, what are all these people doing in the room? You know, or like my favorite people
Exactly.
doing in the room together. And we had a really fun time together. And Jimmy, I met just from having an Instagram, and Jimmy Jam, and it's cool having Instagram, which I think for a lot of us can be a pretty toxic place, or an artificial. Social media can be pretty toxic and artificial, and I take comfort in that I've tried to make it a beautiful, authentic place, and it's
Oh
attracted
yeah.
a lot of really wonderful people, and I've gotten to meet Charlie Hunter and Nile Rodgers, and I'm close with Bill Frisell, who's one of my heroes, and Jimmy Jam, and all these people that I just greatly admire. You know, John Mayer found me. You know, just it's cool being visible and inside of your phone, which you just wouldn't think. Because I didn't grow up with social media. You know,
Yeah.
I didn't. My career didn't start from social media. I'm just making sure we're still recording here. So yeah, it's cool.
That's the beautiful side of it. But you're also experiencing, sometimes you're sharing these horrible things
Oh,
that
it's
people write
horrific.
to you.
I got bullied a ton today. A ton of comments. You know, I haven't even looked at them, but they'll pop up on my phone. You're still a
I'm so
man. You're
sorry.
not a real woman. You know, all this shit. And it's so sad when you zoom out of it. It's kind of like you're angry that I'm happy. And if you look
Exactly.
at
Yeah.
it that way, it shows you how ridiculous it is. You're
Mm-hmm.
angry because I'm happy.
Mm.
You need to say something to try and hurt my feeling. You want to make me hurt so that you can feel better. It's a
Mm-hmm.
really sad coping skill that the only way you know how to feel better is to make someone feel sad, which they won't make me feel sad, but the effort of that.
Yeah. It's horrible. And it's so easy to write something, in the moment where you're not looking somebody in the eye and just writing the next horrible thing
Hiding
just to
behind a
insult. Like,
faceless profile that's private, a
yeah.
lot of times you can't even respond to them. They won't,
Yeah.
they'll make it so no one can respond so that they can just vomit their hatred and then leave.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, but the way you push through with all the beauty that you put out is incredible.
Thanks. Yeah, I mean, there were a couple of times I kind of trolled back just for fun to see what it would feel like. I like used like a gym bro filter and kind of mocked them, and
I think I saw that. Yeah.
it just didn't make me feel great. I didn't feel good about
Mm-hmm.
it. I just
Mm.
I don't. I'm not saying I've never done this, but I don't want to demean someone. I don't
Mm.
feel good about it. And clearly, if someone is going to be hateful, like clearly they're suffering because they don't even
Mm.
know me. How do you hate someone you don't even know?
Mm-hmm.
You know, it's the way they talk to me is the way that they talk to themselves. You know,
Mm-hmm.
so yeah, me shitting on them is it's not going to make me feel better. And
Mm-hmm.
and a lot of times, I just feel very sad for them. I really do, and I don't mean that in a patronizing, oh, I feel bad. Like I really feel sad because I know what it's like to not like myself.
Mm-hmm.
And I mean intimately. I lived as someone who wasn't real for 40 years, so I know what that feeling is. I know the feeling of waking up with a heaviness in your heart, of because you're not being authentic to who you are. So
Mm.
when they do that stuff, like I can feel their hurt. I don't want to say I'm an empath because people that say that are usually the most awful people in the world, but I'll
Yeah.
just say I feel things very deeply and I can literally feel their pain.
Mm.
So yeah, I just don't want to be mean back. It doesn't do anything.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. better just post the next beautiful guitar
Yeah.
thing that will help so many people out there. That's
Yeah.
yeah. But that thing, going back to that studio pick that we talked about,
Yeah.
was it for an album or what was that?
I'm not saying anything.
Okay, I see.
I'm just gonna
I
leave
see.
it as people can draw their own conclusions.
Okay.
And I'll just leave it
Whatever
as
it is, I'm excited about it.
we had a wonderful day together. Yeah.
Great. Great.
Yeah.
When you think about your profession now, you're touring, you're recording, you're teaching, you're writing.
Oh, thank you, by the way, for buying my piano pieces. I was like really touched that you
Hey,
bought
I
that
was
stuff.
yeah,
That was
beautiful.
really
It was
cool.
beautiful to play through a couple of
Oh,
them,
thank
and
you.
yeah, and also to read. And I really like to read and listen to the
Yeah. I was very
recordings.
touched when I saw it. I was like, oh, wow, that was very sweet. So, anyways,
Oh, cool. I love the prelude. That's my favorite piece of those that you've shared there.
it was the first thing I've ever written in my life, if you can believe it. Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah.
Wow.
I mean, the short version is that I've made a life of helping other people with their music. I have a beautiful 1920s Mason and Hamlin piano that I got for like nothing. I'm not a pianist, and I wrote all of those with different sort of storylines and objectives, but very much crawling and finding sound, you know.
That's how it sounded to me, like in
Yeah.
the most beautiful way.
Thanks. Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like this sounds nice. Let's go here.
Yeah.
It sounds improvisatory in a way, although it's a composition.
Yeah. That's interesting.
Very interesting.
Yeah, I mean, Prelude really was written just from that jarring opening chord.
Yeah.
Da da dee da da da
Yeah.
dee da. It was like there's a story behind it, but it was basically like calling out, and that's the second chord was muted and supposed to be further away. And then I just knew the next section. It was almost like storytelling. It wasn't, I'm on this chord, so do I go to the sixth? It was, I have a melody that went ba da 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 dee da. And so when I went to the next section, I just knew I wanted some contrast, but I didn't want 10. So I think I just did da da dee da da da. Like it was a similar rhythm, but the harmony changed, and the voicings went from 6 or 7 notes to 3 or something. So it was more of a story, a quick story. The piece called Berceuse for Levi, which I should have just called it Lullaby for Levi because it sounds better. I wrote that just with all the white keys on the piano because I wanted him to be able to play it by himself one day. I wanted to make it so that a 5-year-old could play it, which, by the way, is pretty much my level of playing piano, but it was all like these parallel, like fourths and fifths, and it was just simply that. And there was another piece, Le Cloche Feutrée, which was just like felted bells, and I just wanted it to sound like some church bells. So, I mean, yeah, there's compositional things and there's harmonic things, but I wasn't thinking of any of that. It was just, I want bells. I want a 5-year-old to play this. I want that's all it was.
Let me ask you about the final chord of Prelude,
Oh yeah.
because it comes so unexpected.
Yeah, what is it, like
And
an
then
F major chord or something?
Yeah, you add another major chord. I don't remember the key right now, but
Yeah.
it's like how did you think about it? Like,
Well, I remember that last stanza in the beginning of the piece. It has this very tense. Are you able to play it? You're probably not even set up for it. But
the thing is, it's pretty late
okay.
right now,
Yeah.
so I can't
Okay.
play without bothering my neighbors.
Gotcha. The opening chord has a very jarring, like it's a statement. It really catches your ear. When I restate it, I relax it a little bit, and it sounds very similar, but I just take a little bit of the
You take something
tension
out.
out of it. It almost has a little more Bill Evans or something. which wasn't intentional. It was just, I want to relax this and just make it feel like it's resolved itself, not resolved like 251, but just there's, and yeah, I just wanted the last chord to just be a little hopeful and open, and that's really all it was. It wasn't, there was nothing. I don't even know that I could analyze that piece of music. I'd have to literally sit and go, okay, it's this chord and I go here, but I wasn't conceiving it that way at all, which
Cool.
may not, feel like there's craft to it, but you know,
Who cares?
yeah,
Sometimes I don't really, I mean, I'm doing a podcast where I talk to the people and pick their brain about how they do things. But in the end, when I listen to music, I'm drawn to it, and sometimes I want to find out specific things. But oftentimes, I don't really care
yeah,
how it's done. It has to move me first. Like
yeah,
the greatest story of how it's done wouldn't really make a difference if I wouldn't like the music. I'm sure you
sure,
feel the same. Like
yeah, yeah,
sometimes when a student plays a piece that they've written for me, and I say, yeah, well, we could try things, and then they say, yeah, but I was actually trying to do this, and then you say, yeah, but I mean, if somebody puts on the radio and this song comes,
yeah, it's
you don't have the benefit of telling the background story to your piece.
kind of like when someone's writing, and I remember John Adams in a lecture said something like, I can tell there's a mathematical agenda going on here in what you're
Mm-hmm.
writing. There's
Yeah.
a oh, but I wrote it, to mimic the human ear and the Fibonacci. Like, okay,
Yeah.
great, but it's not, doing anything. I like, simply put, I like what Philip Glass says. He says music is a place.
Mm-hmm.
And that's, when I wrote all of those things, they were places. They were just different
Mm-hmm.
places. That's kind of how I look at it. It's weird. My brain is split. I guess as an orchestrator, I may be like a little more stuffy and white collar and want to be, impressive because orchestration is a craft and blah blah blah. But when it comes to piano and guitar, I'm just very blue collar. Like, I don't want to think about it. Just play. Just feel it.
Mm-hmm.
It's
Mm-hmm.
weird. I want to be intellectual, but I also don't want to be intellectual at all. It's my
Mm-hmm.
my own internal battle.
The way that we grew up, I think you're a little bit older than me, but in a way we come roughly from the same generation
Hmm.
of growing up at first without the internet.
Yeah.
Um, so when we grew up as children, we were told other things of what we can do or what a roadmap maybe would be for a musician and stuff, and it has changed
Yeah.
since we've done that. What's your view on what your life is, professionally? Like also with Patreon, you also Patreon
Yeah.
and doing that a lot. What's your view on all the things that you're doing? Could have we couldn't have imagined what this life is like right now, huh?
I certainly miss not have. I don't know. Like, the internet has provided a lot of joy and a lot of heartache, but I miss before it was around because we just had to use our imagination and dream a lot more. I feel like it taught us a lot of like children, like playing make believe and those kinds of
Mm-hmm.
things. Like I miss playing make believe as an adult. I
Mm-hmm.
really, really have to be mindful to turn my phone off or not look at it or put it in another room and be away from it and dream.
Mm-hmm.
But now I think it can be a wonderful thing in terms of reaching people. I think it can be a detriment to younger musicians that did grow up with the internet because you and I had to, hunter gather our information, and going back even before us. I mean, for my generation, it was the Marantz cassette recorder that you slow on half speed that goes down the octave, and that was the
Mm-hmm.
only way you could transcribe, unless you could hear a Charlie Parker solo at pitch, which I can't. I
Mm-hmm.
can't even hear it at half. But we just had to really search for our information. And there's funny
Mm.
stories, I think, of the Beatles saying they got on a bus to find a dominant nine chord or something, that there was a guy that literally knew how to play a nine chord. So they got
Yeah,
on the
yeah, yeah.
bus, It really makes you own the information. When I met Spanky Alford, I dropped out of Berkeley and I went to Huntsville, Alabama to get the information that I had dreamed of, and
Yeah.
most importantly, to meet a wonderful, wonderful man, who's no longer here. But there was a commitment, So I do feel like it's also a hindrance too, because a lot of people just feels like they want to be spoon fed. They just want to sit back and have someone come with a spoon and just give it to them. And that their information is, it's like in their phone and it's
Yeah.
not in their bone marrow, in their
Hmm.
bloodstream. And I'm sure we're guilty of some of those things. And maybe there's some things lately we've learned that have just been, quick and immediate. So that stuff sort of concerns me, and I absolutely see it with some younger students that they want. There's a transactuality to like people are being transactional with it. They want a very
Hmm.
quick return to it. The way that I play rhythm, the way that you transcribe, the way that you compose, it's a lifetime of being you and making
Mm.
mistakes. I think, not that you're
I
asking.
don't do. I don't make mistakes.
Yeah, it's gonna.
Maybe you.
No, no,
Yeah.
no. Of course not. No, but I think that's another thing. Not that you brought that up, which is important, is I think a lot of people are afraid of making mistakes and
Yeah.
wasting time.
Oh yeah.
And I
Yes.
think I don't. If I, you know, hold my guitar pick a certain way and play that way for 2 months and then realize, oh my God, if I just change the angle, it's so much more comfortable. I don't look at it as I wasted 2 months of my life playing
It
wrong.
took
It
you
took
two
me two
months
months
to.
to, yeah.
Yeah.
So to just go hold your hand like this, well, maybe that only works for me because of the anatomy of my little chubby hand, but maybe that doesn't work for your hand. And I just think that we have to waste time, but it's not wasting time. It's just the craft of wanting to do music every day
Yeah.
and learn that forms things. And so I think with social media that there's some sort of skip through all of that stuff to just get to the end result, which
Yeah.
doesn't maybe make you appreciate what you have with the knowledge, or maybe that knowledge just isn't meant for you, you know.
Hmm.
So that kind of makes me sad a little bit. Like, no one ever really taught me rhythm. I mean, my friend Jeffrey Lockhart, we got together a couple of years ago and he showed me some things that were, very helpful conceptually to think about things differently. But no one held my hand and taught me how to play rhythm. Not Spanky, not Wawa Watson. A lot of these were conceptual conversations and stuff. But it was the pursuit of wanting to feel good while playing my instrument and trying different things. What if I do more upstrokes? What if I
Mm.
alternate? What if I use this pick? What if I use high action on the guitar? What if I use, maybe it's crazy low action? Maybe that's the thing. And I have come to the conclusion that it's none of those things and all of those things. And I hope this doesn't come across as arrogant, but I'll play a guitar that the action is so low, it's rattling against the neck. And I'll use, a paper thin pick, and someone will be like, that's so funky. What are you doing? What's the this and that? And I'll tell them. And then the next day I'll pick up a guitar that's the polar opposite, that has action so high they're like train tracks and it's hard to push down. And I'm playing a 3.0 pick that's like, rock candy. And they're like, that's the sound. What is that? And I'm like, it's the complete opposite thing of what I did yesterday.
Yeah.
It's,
You're the instrument.
yeah, basically. Yeah.
Hmm.
I mean, it's
Hmm.
fascinating with your instrument that when you think about it, you're pushing a button and a button
Yep.
is giving you a sound, but like, how is it that someone sounds like Bill Evans? I mean, he's just pushing the same button you're pushing, and yet
Hmm.
it sounds totally different.
It does. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, certainly it's touch and note choice and space, but I mean, it's like I kind of said this to Bill Frisell before, but it's like Bill, I can hear you play a C major scale and know it's you.
Yeah.
Without soloing, without just, you pluck two notes. I'm like, there's Bill Frisell. There he
Yeah.
is. You know,
Yeah.
it's like, it's
That's
wild.
beautiful.
Yeah, it's
Yeah.
beautiful. It is. Yeah.
But that's also another invitation to just be you,
Yeah,
right?
I think so.
If that's possible, then you can just be you and play C major. You
Yeah,
know?
yeah. It terrifies a lot of people to be themselves. You know, I mean, there's a
Mm.
lot of people that, not to get overly emotional or therapeutic about it, but a lot of people just aren't comfortable being alone or being by
Mhm.
themselves, or, you know, takes some people a
But
lifetime to find who they are, or they never
mm,
find it. So,
it's a big part of our profession also, like being alone.
yeah, it can be. It can be, yeah. Yeah, I mean, it took me 40 years to find, I don't want to, it took me, I've been playing music for 30 years, so I can say it took me 30 years to find my voice on the instrument, and it took me
Mm.
40 years to have the courage to just be who I am. I knew who I was at 3 years old. I didn't know what the word was for it, but I
Hmm.
knew who I was. Um, Took a lot of years, and you know, a lot of people just aren't comfortable being who they are outside of who they've been told that they're supposed to be.
Mm.
It terrifies people. It's, and again, not to be deep about it, but it's why people hate me, because I live a life that's not what it was supposed to be by the gender I was assigned at birth, and they see me coloring outside the lines, and it absolutely enrages them
Mm.
because they're living a life that's not honest to who they are. So they're mad that, you know, they're locked up in their cage.
Yeah, it challenges what they think they are,
Yeah,
their idea of what they think a person, a
yeah,
man, a woman, or
yeah.
whatever should be like,
And trans
should look
people,
like, and or do.
that's right, yeah. And trans people sort of smash that ideology. And at the end of the day, like, trans people are willing to risk anything to be who they are.
Mm.
I say I'm risking everything to just be happy, but being trans doesn't necessarily bring tons of joy in today's world. You know, I mean, I do have a lot of joy today, but I risked everything to just be authentic and to be who I am. You
Mm.
know, financial security, physical safety, whatever, you know, but that's how much joy means to trans people, that they're
Mm.
willing to give up everything for it, you know, and that's what I think is so beautiful about us, and what upsets me so much that people hate us so much. And it's like, look at them as a people that are willing to do anything to just be happy and comfortable. That's a beautiful thing. It's not a terrifying thing, you know.
It's brave.
It's a brave thing, you
Mm.
know. The sad thing is, and I obviously I know you mean it as a compliment, like, it's sad that we have to be brave
Oh
to
yeah.
be who we
Hmm.
are, you know. It's sad,
Yeah.
but it's the world we live in right now. And I don't know, maybe it'll be different.
Hopefully it'll
I
change.
hope so. We've been doing this for thousands of years.
Hmm.
It makes me really sad that, you know, our best thinking is like murdering other people will solve a problem. After thousands of years of being on the planet, that's the best thinking we've got.
Yeah.
I got the solution. You know, I'm not trying to
Yeah.
get into politics, but yeah, I just would love to see a kinder, more empathetic future for people. More love,
Mm.
you know? Yeah.
Thank you for saying that.
Yeah, of course.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I was talking to a friend of mine the other day. I was sort of telling him, just was having a hard day with being bullied. And he's like, Ella, if it's not leading with love, just ignore it. What's the point? You
Yeah.
know, and it's maybe simple on paper, but he's right. I just feel like I really, really feel like we're put on this planet to love and make connections. Like, why else are we here? To
Yeah.
build the Sistine Chapel? Like, okay, cool, but we're here to love and experience
Yeah.
love and share love. I just think that's the essence of human beings. And if it's not leading with love, then I'm going to do my best to not let it ruin my day and pay attention to it.
I read this or heard this thing the other day, like people either act out of love or hate or the absence of love or something, or no, fear. Yeah,
Yeah,
that's either love or fear.
yeah,
So all the things that trans people are experiencing, the bad stuff, comes from fear also, or the absence of love.
yeah. I heard someone say, hatred is love that's lost its way, or something like that.
Hmm.
But yeah, it is fear. We've spent a lifetime murdering and oppressing people that are different.
Oh yeah.
Done it in Nazi Germany. We've done it to African Americans. We've done it to Native Americans. We've done it to any indigenous people. It's just someone's different. And rather than approaching with love or curiosity, it's, something very entirely different. And yeah, it's sad. And it's sad, especially when it's such a small group of people. Like my people make up less than 1% of the world's population, quite literally. And yet we're so powerful that we're the topic of conversation, at least in the United States, but I know it in the world, of just political shit. And people want it, like, how are you that oppressed by a group of people? We're less than 1%.
Yeah.
It's like there's 80 gajillion people and you're terrified of like 6 people.
Where's the threat to other people?
Yeah.
Even.
Trans women in sports, it's not fair. There's like 2 of us. Like, there's not, 262 of us winning gold medals. There's like 2 of us. Like, why, you know? So we know that we're powerful, but it's a lot. It's heavy, and it's given me an appreciation and a mindfulness for all oppressed people,
Yeah, I
certainly
can
indigenous people, because I sort of look at it like there's a group of people, like maybe Native Americans, as an example, that are so beautiful and powerful, and we try and take everything away from them and try and make them feel like they're not special, and it breaks my heart that throughout history we've just tried to do that to people, to anyone who's different. We've tried to strip them of their humanity. Yeah, it just makes me very sad. And I just love learning about all indigenous peoples, and because it just makes me feel more connected to my people and makes me want to fight more in the world. And yeah. Sorry, I know this is off topic from from harmony, but you play like you are, right?
Sure, yeah.
So
Sure. No, it's all connected.
yeah, yeah.
It does feel weird to direct the conversation to another topic now, I have
So
to
how do
say.
you feel about minor 9 voicings?
Yeah, that's what I mean. Yeah.
What's your favorite rootless voicing?
Yeah. This is super weird segue. Not a segue at all. But I love playing video games.
Sure.
And you've scored something for Destiny,
Yeah.
right? And it's a long time that I played the first Destiny, like a long time ago.
Cool.
There's this thing where the choir comes in the menu that is still stuck in my. Did you have anything to do with that?
I
choir
came in
thing,
at the
or?
very, very end of Destiny 1. So most of what I've been with the Destiny franchise for, I think it's coming up on like 11 years or something. So I came in basically right at the beginning of Destiny 2. I think my first big release was the Taken King or something like that. Yeah.
And how does the work for like a video game score? What kind of notes do you get? What kind of what's the process there? I can't really imagine for a game that big and
Yeah. So with Destiny, I'm not really composing. I'm orchestrating. I'm
right.
doing
Okay.
additional arranging, but
Mm-hmm.
I'm basically getting a standard MIDI file, and then
Mm-hmm.
that MIDI file, and then I'm getting a two mix, and I'm getting stems to the the cue as we call it, because it's not a piece of music. I mean, it is a piece of music, but we call them cues. And that goes off to my music copying team, and they'll clean up the MIDI and all that stuff, quantize a 64th note into an eighth note, or all that kind of stuff. So I get it in sketch mode, kind of like a piano reduction. And then I start working, and it depends on the composer. Some composers are looking for a lot in terms of color and filling things in, and some composers are looking for you to almost kind of like with John Williams. It's almost more you're like a copyist. I mean, of course you're an orchestrator, but it's more just like carry out John's instructions and just make
Mm-hmm.
sure everything is accounted for in what he wrote. So it depends on the composer, you know.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Interesting. And you work for films? How
Some stuff, mostly games. Yeah.
mostly games, yeah.
I mean, it's different. I mean, with video games, what's challenging but also fun is that it's not linear music, and
Mm-hmm.
it's not going left to right. And so there are all these layers getting turned on, and you're sort of creating this Lego kit of music that you can assemble however you want, and that you could turn a 7-minute piece could maybe be repurposed into a 37-minute piece or something.
Mm-hmm.
So when I orchestrate, I'm certainly thinking as an acoustic orchestrator and making sure that things balance, in isolated sections, but I don't know how they're going to use it. I
Interesting.
never know. And what's
Yeah.
interesting is when the soundtrack comes out, it's like, oh, okay, that 14-minute cue turned into that 14-minute cue, as in 14 minutes of recorded music, turned into a 3-minute piece on the soundtrack, and a 40-minute piece in the video game.
Hmm.
So it's very interesting, and there's no rule book for orchestrating for video game, because if I'm studying Mahler or Strauss or something, which are amazing things to study, I'm studying music for the concert hall. And in video game, I'm studying or learning music for the orchestration for the microphone is a better way.
Hmm.
Orchestration for the concert hall, orchestration for a microphone. 6 basses in a concert hall, perfect match for 12 cello or whatever. In a recording session against the glass, when there's already sub bass synths happening, maybe 2 bass, maybe 1 bass is the move. So
Hmm.
there's a lot of things that are not in a Berlioz book on orchestration.
Mm-hmm.
Certain principles still apply, but a lot of them go out the window. Any orchestrator knows that a flute on middle C and a trumpet on middle C, the trumpet wins.
Mm.
In video game, orchestration for the microphone, the flute could win. Turn up the fader.
Right.
It
Yeah.
you talked about the piano and pushing buttons and being used to them doing certain things. And orchestration for games, it can kind of mess with your head, because it's like, wait a minute, I organize a 2D so the woodwinds are way at the top and the brass is below them, and the strings sort of maybe fill in the middle, and there's a gaping hole in the woodwinds between the contrabassoon and say the clarinet, because the trombones are going to fill it up. There's
Mm.
certain rules. No, I mean, yeah, rules or principles. But that stuff goes out the window because maybe in the video game, they don't want the gaping hole between the contrabassoon and the third clarinet. Maybe they want you to fill it in. Well, you fill it in the real world and it's getting obliterated by the trombones. It's pointless. I mean, in short, when you organize a tutti, everyone in their loudest register, if it's a loud, tutti. But in video game, it's like, well, we record every section separately. We call it striping. So, well, now your woodwinds sound hollow and crude because there's 2 octaves missing between the contrabassoon and the clarinet. Laid together in a room sounds amazing by itself. So, you're having to kind of do a lot of different decision making. Does that make sense? Yeah.
When you talk about orchestration, I'm beginning to wonder, like, when you get into orchestration, or when you got into orchestration, and then you had your first kind of opportunities to work. How did you, or before that even, like, how did you get into moments where you could hear those different, how the different sounds sound when you make these kind of decisions? Like, what were opportunities for you to be in front of an orchestra and an ensemble to see what it sounds like?
Well, I wish I grew up in an orchestra because that would have made things a lot easier to have played an instrument in the orchestra. Sadly, I didn't. I had some experiences. I was playing with the Roots and we were backing up Jay-Z, and we played Carnegie Hall and Radio City Music Hall with an orchestra. I had done this concert called Suite for Maudukes, which was arranged by Miguel Atwood Ferguson, friend of mine, and he did a masterful job. And just being inside of the orchestra and just hearing them tune up, I mean, I got goosebumps, and I just, that ignited my passion for it. And then I just did so much listening. I didn't even know how to read music back then. Really,
Wow.
Truly, I didn't know how to read music.
What year is this?
Well, those concerts were, I think the first one was like 2005. I mean, I knew how to read like treble clef and bass clef, but like, I don't know, French horn and, an F? No, get the fuck out of here. I was a dumb guitar player. I mean, I still am. So it was, going back to like ear training of just not knowing but listening. I'll never forget being in France with Erykah Badu, buying a copy of La Mer, and just looking at it on the bus and not knowing what the fuck I was looking at, but just noting, okay, when the strings go, there's some slash marks. Okay, it's almost looking at it like hieroglyphics or something, pictures.
Wow.
And, I mean, I knew what a whole note, like, I don't want to say I didn't know how to read music, but I was not a very studied musician with the orchestra. And I started to just notice sound combinations and file them away in my brain, if that makes any sense. Like, French horn plus clarinet makes the horn sad. French horn plus alto flute makes the horn mysterious. Or like those kinds of things. I would just file them in my brain or take notes. And so a lot of it happened that way, just score reading, hours and hours and hours of score reading. I have tons
I
of
have
scores.
to do that more. I never really do it because I get scared of all the different, as you said, like how different instruments are notated.
Yeah.
I'm so used to reading and see,
I know.
And I came up as also learning through the ear more. So my reading is not great, It got better over years.
It's not.
But I'm
it's not
still
as,
in a way scared of it.
It's not as bad as you think about it, because flute, you're reading in C. Oboe, you're reading in C. I mean, clarinets, okay, if you're reading in B flat or A, you're bumping them down, a second or a third or whatever. Bassoon, you're reading in concert, and contrabassoon, and, trumpets, I guess it depends if they're playing in C or B flat. It's really the English horn and the French horn that's seeing a big change in terms of transposition. I mean, unless you're reading a Strauss score with fucking horns and E and, all this kind of stuff. But in the modern orchestra, I mean, it's not as bad as you think. You're kind of just having to go, okay, those people go down a couple of pitches. Those people go down a fourth or a fifth, and it's not
Right.
as overwhelming as you think that it is.
It's also an excuse for me not to do it.
Fair, yeah.
I have to be honest. Like I would do it more. I should do it more. It's
I
like,
just think,
yeah.
to me, it's like watching a movie and reading a book and listening to music. It's fun to, I know this sounds insane because some people are probably like, that's fun. But like, it's fun to listen to a passage and go, man, what would the page look like? Like, what are they,
Mm-hmm.
and then look and be like, oh, wow, I was way off.
Mm-hmm.
Or just to follow along and be like, wow, that's such a massive sound. What am I hearing? Like, okay,
Mm-hmm.
the bass is in unison with the sarrusophone or the contrabassoon, and like, oh, so that's what makes it sound sinister. You just, I don't know, it's like fun for me. I know that's might not be fun.
And who were people who um showed you along a little bit when you came up like this?
Yeah, so the beginning, it was basically I just listened and stared at the score and kind of had no idea what was going on. And I kind of did the worst thing, which I don't recommend, but which was the best thing for me, is I didn't start with Haydn or Bach or Mozart. I went right fucking to Ravel, and specifically
Mm-hmm.
to Daphnis and Chloe, the full
Oh yeah,
ballet, to
yeah.
just all the ghost notes, all the, little brush strokes, all the detail, you know. And I got used to staring at that, so that, no disrespect, but like when I would look at Beethoven, I'd be like, oh, this isn't so bad. Like it was just,
Mm-hmm.
I was like, this is very clean, you know.
Mm-hmm.
So that's initially how I learned in listening. Then I met a guy named Alan Belkin. Have you heard of him?
Mm-hmm.
He used to teach at the University of Montreal. His teacher studied with Nadia Boulanger.
Mm.
So, and Alan, yeah, he lives in Montreal, taught at the University of Montreal. So I was really lucky because I learned French aesthetic in orchestration. No disrespect to German orchestration, but they're very different.
Mm.
German is a lot of mixing colors, and it's a heavier sound. And France at that time was a revolt to Germany because they were just hearing Beethoven and heavy music, you know. And so their, like, fuck you was, we're going to write light transparent music, and we're going to do
Mm.
this, and we're going to put nines in our chords, and what, not saying that German music doesn't have nine, but it was like they were like the punk rocks, Debussy and Ravel, and especially Satie,
Mm.
you know. It's like, fuck you, regular harmony. Like, you're
Yeah,
getting dominant nine chords going in whole steps.
yeah.
And
Oh, actually, there was one of your piano pieces that reminded me of one of my favorite nocturnes by Satie.
oh,
Um,
is it the third nocturne?
yeah, I think so. Yeah.
That's one of my favorite pieces. It probably I it's probably in there, not intentionally, but I
Mm-hmm.
dun, da, 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 dee, da, da, dee, da, dee, do, da, 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 dee,
Yeah,
dee, do,
yeah,
da,
yeah,
da,
yeah,
da.
yeah.
I
Oh, yeah.
I mean, that harmony is otherworldly. That could be like a
Yes,
Robert Glasper song in 2022. That
and what the
harmony's,
left hand does and stuff, and how that. Yeah.
it's modern,
Mm-hmm.
and that was written in like 1909 or something.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Oh, that's one of my favorite pieces of music of all time. Yeah, probably
Yeah.
that fall is probably what I got from that piece.
Mm-hmm.
I'm sorry, Sachi.
Beautiful.
Yeah.
Well.
You know, uh, anyways, I sort of lost my train of
Oh, I'm
thought, but
sorry. You were talking about Balkan,
oh yeah,
the
Alan. So
person.
he taught me French orchestration and sort of just not being greedy and taking what you need. Like, his whole thing was like, orchestrate with the least amount of resources you need to get your idea across. And
Mm.
then when you're done, okay, maybe I want to add a little thing here. But he would always say to me, like, Ella, don't over, like, what did he say? Like, you're over gilding the lily, or you're gilding the lily, you know, or something like that. You're just doing, there's just too much here, you know. Um, so I learned to be very reserved, which is funny because in my orchestrations for Bungie, it's a lot more German. It's a lot heavier and richer and fuller, and there is a lot more doublings. You know, like Mahler would give no fucks about putting like four oboes in unison or something. You know, Ravel in 1909 would be horrified. He'd be like, "Why do you need four of them together? Like, don't use an oboe then. Use a trumpet if you need that much power or something." You know. So yeah, so I learned a lot from him, and then truly my greatest teacher, aside from Ravel scores, is Conrad Pope, who Conrad's orchestrated just everything. The Harry Potter series, Star Wars, Lord of the Rings, James Newton Howard, James Horner, Alan Silvestri, you know, John. I mean, he's just orchestrated everything. And he's just like a master craftsman. He's like the Ravel of film music.
Oh, okay.
And I learned so much from looking at his scores for film. And then him and I became friends, you know, which is really, really cool. I mean, I studied his stuff that so deeply that I even started writing a book on the way that he orchestrates music. Like that's how I think I'm at like 30,000 words. That's
Cool.
how deep I got into it, because it was helping me in my orchestration for what I did. And a lot of what he was doing was orchestrating for the microphone, but coming from, you know, studying Mahler and whomever. Like, I'll give you one example. He'd get 8 basses when he worked with the LSO, you know, at Abbey Road or something like that. A lot of people would just write Divisi in the bass and, okay, 4 and 4. Just split them in half. He would do stuff like 7 basses playing in unison, but 1 bass with the cello, because he wanted to increase the fullness in the cello, in unison with the cello. So 7 people doing one thing, the 8th person doing something different. He would divide the basses where, you know, it's 5 on the bottom and 3 on the upper octave. You know, he said he got that from Mahler 5. But it was like, yeah, I'm thinking of it almost like organ registration and pulling things out. So it's a very specific way, but it's also moderating overtones. Oh, sorry. I knew my cat.
Hello.
This is my son, Mooney. Hi, Mooney.
Hello. Nice to meet you.
Hopefully he doesn't click anything off. You know, it's a very specific way of orchestrating, and it's orchestrating for the microphone to, you know, solve the problem of maybe too much low end in a gesture, or needing to fatten the cellos or something like that. And yeah.
So did he also tell you about working, how it is to work with John Williams?
Yeah, he's the one that sort of gave me the anecdote of you're like a copyist, you know. John knows what he wants. What are you gonna do that he hasn't already done, you know? So you're basically just taking his sketch and blowing it out into full score for the copyists, and, you know, maybe filling in something with, maybe there's a missing dynamic, or you know, certain things. But John Williams sketches are like final orchestrations. When Conrad orchestrates for Alexandre Desplat on like something like Harry Potter, The Deathly Hallows, or The Curious Case of Benjamin Button, which I
I love that score.
love that
Yes,
score.
that's
I have
that's
I
beautiful.
have Conrad's orchestrations to it, and he's doing all kinds of like chamber music techniques with natural bass harmonics and shit that like Henri Dutilleux would do, or, you know, that you'd hear in like German expressionist music. With Alexandre, he's doing a lot he's just he's doing a lot more, and I don't mean in terms of, you know, disrespecting the music, but he's being himself more and coloring things a
Hmm.
lot more, you know. And that's also cool to see, you know, the different orchestrations when someone is, you know, being literal with the sketch and how they choose to fill things in. I mean, I'll give you
Mm.
one example. Like maybe the composer's writing four part horn harmony
Hmm.
with mutes on, so they want something dark and mysterious. But maybe the better move is having the bottom horns on tubin horn, you know, on Wagner tuba. So you're
Hmm.
not changing the fact that they want the color of horns. You're not changing the fact that you want mysterious. You're just giving them a more refined, zoomed in serious or mysterious or whatever. And so that's
Hmm.
a lot of what we can do as orchestrators is just hyper focus on something and just make it more colorful.
Mm.
Because no disrespect to the composer, they just might not know certain things. They might not know that this note is not great on the bass trombone, even though you want the bass trombone because it's a bass. It may just be better on a tenor trombone because
Hmm.
of the pedal tone or what, you know, just little things that orchestrators sort of obsess over and think about that a composer might not. They just know they want the color of the brass or a trombone,
Hmm.
you know. Yeah.
How often do you go out and hear classical concerts?
I thought you were gonna say,
And
how often do you go out? Like, do you leave the house? You seem to really like this music stuff.
hmm.
I'm really, really lucky because where I live, this is where Leonard Bernstein used to come every summer.
Hmm. What's the name of that?
Tanglewood.
Tanglewood. Yeah.
Did you see the
Okay, but
Bernstein movie with a?
I saw that. Yeah,
That's 5 minutes from my house.
it looked like a beautiful area,
Yeah, it's gorgeous here.
and that's also where John Williams does his residency.
Yeah,
And
I've seen John walking
cool.
around many times. Yeah.
Ooh. Okay. Cool.
Yeah, it's a beautiful place in the summer. The Boston Symphony Orchestra lives here for the whole summer and they perform. And so I haven't done it this past year, but I would just go to rehearsals Saturday morning with my score in my hand.
Nice.
And, you know, sorry, my cat, it's like literally just being a troublemaker. So I'm just like making sure he's not going to hit my
Yeah. Yeah.
keyboard and
Yeah.
hang up.
Yep.
Yeah, so I would score read and just
Mm.
hang out. And yeah, I think the most fascinating thing I learned from orchestration is it doesn't take a lot of people to make a big sound because of the overtone
Hmm.
series,
Yeah.
which sort of goes back to maybe what you were talking about with Herbie and Nefertiti.
Hmm.
And, you know, a couple of notes and it's this cloud of color. You know,
Yeah.
it's,
The way he plays it.
yeah,
Yeah.
same thing with the orchestra.
When somebody asks you to play the guitar part on their recording,
Mhm.
how do you go about it generally? Or maybe you could also say, talk about a specific example recently.
Well, I mean the approach is the same every time, which is like listen a lot before I even touch my instrument. There's a Albert Einstein saying I love, and I'm probably going to butcher it, but it's something like think about the problem for 55 minutes and solve it in a minute or something like, you know, just like think about it a lot and then just solve it really quick as opposed to okay, I think I got it and just constantly sort of fumbling. I mean, they both get you at the same result in
Mm.
the end, but I find that if I listen a lot and especially without my instrument in my hand, I'm listening like an arranger. I'm listening like what's missing,
Yeah.
or maybe a better way to say it is I'm listening for the space where there's space for me to get in. Whether the space is register or the space is just rhythmic, of just, oh, here's an open phrase to kind of put a part in or something like that. And a lot of times I'll just start by making little notes like, oh, electric sitar would be nice here. Oh, I think some strum would be nice. I notice the sections, there's not really, like the sections are very sort of, you can sort of see the seams between sections. So I think I need a lot of like transitional sounds, like that violin or effect, you know, which I did on that Silk Sonic Leave the Door Open, you know, it sort of mimics the
Yeah.
door opening, you know. So they're
Yeah.
little things, but they can, you know, make a big difference. So I just do a lot of listening. And then when I start recording, and this might sound a little odd, I'm really not even thinking about the chords. I'm not really thinking that it goes F minor 9/11 to A flat suspended to B flat minor 9 to C altered or something. Because if I think that way, then I'm going to probably try and go after the chords. But if I just know roughly I'm in this key, whatever the key is, then I could just listen and hum parts, like rhythms that could be in there. And then I sort of try and find things with common tones and not moving around a lot. And sometimes it's just contrast. Like, okay, there's a Fender Rhodes and they're doing a lot of sprinkling. And there's an organ and he's got all the drawbars pushed in except for the third one. So he's doing the French horns, you know, he's filling out the fullness, and the Rhodes is covering so much. So do I need harmony here? Like, is that really what needs to happen? Or maybe I just need some kind of hook or something that's repetitive because I'm the one driving this thing down the road and they're doing all the ornamentation, you know. And it may be the exact opposite, where they're very much like parts and it's not moving. So maybe I do more color by adding in more arpeggiation and ornamentation and stuff. So a lot of it is contrast of just what are they doing, how can I contrast it, or just in orchestration with knowing when to double and when not to double. Like, ooh, maybe this line right here would be great, you know, boom, 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 boom. Like maybe that line's great to double. I'll do a whole bunch of other crap, but when it comes to that line, I'm gonna tag on to it to make it speak a little bit more. So it's not really one approach. I'd say the universal approach is just listening.
And seeing what it needs.
Because every time I have the guitar in my hand, I start trying to figure out the chords, and I just find that my parts aren't really parts, that I'm sort of playing on top of the music as opposed to playing inside of it or through it. So that's why I just choose not to have the guitar, because I just know myself. I know that I'm going to try and, you know, try and pull it apart.
That's good advice.
Yeah.
I think I needed to hear that. Thank you.
Yeah. I mean, it helps you come up. I mean, some music isn't about parts, though. You know, some music is just comp all the way through and never play the same thing twice. But a lot of what I do is parts, memorable, you know, hooks.
I especially liked what you said about getting in within the music,
Yeah.
you know, and playing from there.
Yeah. You know,
as opposed to on top.
it's we were talking earlier about, you know, rhythm paying the bills, or the covert chops like Ray Brown pays the bills. You know, writing parts pays the bills, because I walk into a recording session and someone goes, Ella, I got this song, and it goes, you know, C, 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 F, 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 C. And I'm like, okay, cool, I got it. C, 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 F, 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 C. And you're like, okay, great. You know, like anyone can do that. But if I go, I don't know if you can hear that at all. If I start playing a line like that, it's like, holy shit, that makes that song memorable, as opposed to,
Yeah.
like there's nothing, you know, I'll plug my guitar in and just play it again. Like, there's nothing wrong with that, and there's a time and place for that, but maybe not as memorable, you know. So again, if it's, you know, you know, it's okay. It's cool. It's got more of a Stax thing. But this just, I mean, I did come in and I did go, hey, my song goes, but the person who goes, oh, yes, how about something? You win. You won. They're calling you every time because you just gave their song an identity and a sonic thumbprint by
Yeah.
just doing, you know, that instead of being like, oh, yeah. Which I hear all these young kids, you know, just like it's cool, but what's the part? You know,
Yeah.
and when Bruno called me for Silk Sonic, like he had, you know, I mean, I do this stuff naturally, but I remember him telling me he brought in a guitar player that, you know, can play, sorry, it's my cat, can play circles around me. And the guy came in and just played a whole bunch of crap, kind of like playing on top of the music. And Bruno was like, what's the part? Like, I don't want to sit here and edit that for 2 hours. What's the part, you know? So I think part writing is a huge, you know, thing of continuing to work. And those are the things I strive for just because those are the things, just like how I value rhythm, good parts to me, I'm just so in awe of because it's kind of like that missing puzzle piece. And you're
Yeah.
just like, oh man, you just solved the whole thing. You know, it's like
Yeah.
someone creates this masterpiece, and then you go, boom, boom, and you're out. And it's like, oh my God, that laminated it and framed it. And that's why I love like my friend Stuart Matthewman, who plays guitar for Sade. Well, he's in Sade. Sade's a band. He writes some of the best parts, and they're just simple guitar parts, but they're memorable. You just hear them and they stick out, and I just adore musicians like that. I think that's the coolest skill, to just be like, yeah, I wrote the guitar part to my girl. That's as exciting to me as I'm Herbie Hancock. Sorry, you know. Yeah.
Your story just made me think of another story that I think I'm going to butcher, but a friend of mine told me about this thing on a ship which was broken, and they brought in all kinds of specialists or like people who knew something about technical things. Everybody was thinking about this problem, and this big engine didn't work, you know, and everybody tried different things. And then they called this one great specialist, and he came and he said, he knew exactly where to hit the thing with a hammer.
Yeah.
He said, and it worked again. Like, and that's what experience brings you. You know exactly how to, as you said, you think about the problem, look at it from all kinds of ways, and then you find the solution and go at it.
Yeah, it's kind of like we have a similar, I mean, I'm sure it comes from the same story, but then it gets a little more greedy American, which is like, and then you get the bill, and then the bill says 900, and you're like, you were here for 2 minutes. And it was like, yeah, but it took me 50
Yeah.
years to do it
I forgot that
in
part.
2 minutes.
I forgot that part.
But it's true.
Yes.
It's that like, yeah, maybe you do it very quickly, but you had a lifetime doing it to know to tap right there.
Yeah.
So, you know, did you really want the guy to sit there for 6 hours and, you know, figure it like, that's what you're paying for. You're paying for the experience of knowing, you know, like in orchestration, you're almost paying the orchestrator to not put two trombones on the melody and to just know that one's enough. Like sometimes it's just goes back to like what you don't do, what you choose not to do. And I just, yeah, experience is what gets you there, to just know how much is enough. You know, there was a friend of mine who writes some of the most like amazing parts on records, and a lot of it, if you strip away the great sound design and stuff he's doing, a lot of it is like parallel sixths. and stuff like that. And it just always sounds so amazing.
Mm.
You know, it's like literally just parallel thirds and sixths every
Mm-hmm.
time, you know. I mean, he happens to be using gorgeous sounds and stuff like that, but
Mm-hmm.
yeah, doesn't need three notes in it. Just needed two. Just needed the high violin pad, like
Mm.
Johnny Mandel. I'm thinking of his arrangements with Shirley Horn and stuff like that. And he'll just
Oh yeah.
have a high consortino, or the economy of Klaus Ogerman's arrangements with Jobim. There'll just be
Yeah.
some single high, like cantus firmus line going against Jobim, soaring up where no one else is, and that's
Yeah.
it. There's no harmony. There's not. That's all it needed. That's
Yeah.
all he needed.
Yeah.
Was it. But somebody else would come in and make it too dense and too expensive sounding and too pretentious, and
Mm-hmm.
you know, that's, I think, yeah, the experience.
Do you know this album of Klaus Orgemann with Danilo Perez?
Beyond the Crystal Sea. So you want to know
Yeah.
something interesting about that album? That was supposed
Yeah,
to be a
please tell me.
Klaus Ogerman album playing piano.
Oh wow.
It was
Okay.
supposed to be a Klaus Ogerman album, and I believe the late Tommy LaPuma said, Klaus, like, like, this is for Danilo, like this, you know, like, because I don't know if Klaus thought that was going to be his swan song or something, but I think he was conceiving it as a sort of like, yeah, piano with orchestra, like he did with Bill and stuff. And I'm almost
Mm-hmm.
positive, I'd have to find the article, that like it was originally going to be for him, and like Klaus picked this crazy German composer, Hugo Disler. He's a
Mm-hmm.
choral composer. I think he killed himself when the Nazis seized power. He's German. He's not Jewish, I don't think.
Mm-hmm.
Amazing choral composer, and Klaus picked a couple of those pieces and put it on the Danilo, which I think is why it was going to be a Klaus album. Like he was making it like
Mm-hmm.
close to his heart, you know.
It's a beautiful album, I
Yeah.
think. I really
Check out
like it.
Hugo Disler, Distler.
Yeah,
He has some
I
piano
will.
stuff that's gorgeous, and wrote some harmony books. If you go on to IMSLP,
Yeah,
yeah, I'm curious what you think.
I'm there quite often.
Yeah,
I like
same,
that space.
same.
Isn't that amazing
Oh, it's,
that we can access all that stuff?
yeah. My other favorite one is Encoda, which
Oh, I don't know that.
it's, you get more than MSLP. You can't download anything, but it'll have
Mm-hmm.
like every John Adams and Philip Glass score and a lot of modern composers.
Oh wow.
There's stuff that's not public domain yet, you know.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah,
Okay, cool.
NKODA.
I mean, I really like to have the actual book in my hands usually,
Yeah.
you know, because I like to make notes and stuff. And I have a lot of single papers, you know, printed out from IMSLP
Mm-hmm.
with notes in it. But I really like to have the book because I can, you know,
Yeah,
it's another feeling
yeah,
for me. But I think it's such a great resource for
Yeah.
all of us.
yeah, it's amazing. But yeah, that album
Let me
is,
quickly look this up, you know, and then you find it and you can
yeah,
read along. Mm-hmm.
yeah, I mean, that album is gorgeous. I think one of my favorite charts, and actually I think it was Klaus's favorite chart he ever did, was it Lazy Afternoon or something? It's
Oh,
on the
yes.
Freddie Hubbard
Yes.
album. And
Oh,
I think it's Freddie
he,
Hubbard.
yes, but that could be. I don't know the Freddie Hubbard version, but I think he also
Oh, did
did
it
it
with
on the
Danilo.
Danilo. Yeah.
I'm almost positive it's on Freddie Hubbard as well. And here's an interesting
Oh, cool.
story. The Freddie Hubbard album, do you know that album I'm
No.
talking about? It's
Which one is it?
let me pull it up and see if I can play it from my speaker. It's absolutely gorgeous. I don't want to say the wrong name, so
Maybe I've heard it. I don't know.
it was supposed to be let's see. It's called The Love Connection. I'm going to just turn up the volume.
Mm-hmm.
Tell me if you can hear this, so you can't talk for a sec. here's lazy.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, here's Lazy Afternoon. It's like it's sorry, turn my speaker down. It's like overwhelmingly beautiful.
Oh yeah.
It came out in
That's,
'79. That's when it came out.
I think that's until then, until that moment, that's,
Same
I
chart.
think that's almost the same
Yeah,
chart, but it played faster
it
than
might be.
the. And that's something that often happens with age, right?
Yeah,
Like with older age, and also I mean with in general as a person, you talk slower a little bit when you get older,
yeah,
you know. And sometimes with composers and arrangers, you hear the slower version when they are a little bit more, when they're a little older.
Klaus said something that's sort of my motto with music. He said, "Music that takes its time," and I
Yeah,
just love that expression. Music that takes its
yeah,
time.
yeah,
Yeah, this was an album that was supposed to be sort of Freddie's version of like a not Bill Evans with symphony, but maybe his version of like a symphonic kind of Miles
beautiful.
Gill kind of thing. And he said that Freddie sort of got cold feet, that they did a few charts, and then because it was 1979 and disco was happening, he sort
Right.
of went and did a couple of more kind of CTI sounding, like funk kind of stuff. And it sort of doesn't really blend with the other charts. Here's another, just one little thing I'm going to play you.
Oh,
Same
yeah.
Oh
album.
yeah, please.
And Tribe Called Quest ended up sampling that. But that's his harmony
Mm.
again. Just going back to the beginning of our conversation, like it's rich and colorful, but it's not pretentious. It's just so beautiful. There's a
Yeah,
band I want to say, and I just can't say it because I'll get in so much trouble. But it's like it's the harmony's pretentious. You know,
hmm,
this is not pretentious. It just happens to be colorful, but it's
yeah.
beautiful.
What do you think about Claire Fisher?
Oh, I love him. He's wonderful. Yeah. And going back to like, don't seek them, seek what they sought. I remember watching a Claire Fisher masterclass or something. He was wearing these like Ugg boots,
And shorts?
very short shorts.
Yes,
But
yes, that's the one.
yeah,
That's a good
but
one.
I remember he was playing something at the piano and he talked about Henri Dutilleux. And that's where I
Yes,
first heard of Dutilleux. And I listened
yes.
and I was like, okay,
Hmm.
I can hear some of
Yeah,
the influence. Yeah,
that makes sense.
yeah,
Yes, he loved Dutilleux.
yeah,
Yes,
yeah. No,
beautiful.
he's wonderful. I mean, I love all the arrangers and Nelson Riddle and Johnny Mandel's one of my favorites. That
Hmm.
Shirley Horn Here's to Life album
Oh yeah.
and the stuff he's done with Tony Bennett. Like those are some of my favorite charts. You know. ever. So much wonderful music out there. It's overwhelming.
I kind of want you to play me music all day, but I do have
Likewise.
to go to bed
Yeah,
now.
likewise. No, this has been really fun. I just have to say real quick, like, I'm honored to be on here because I've loved watching, your channel, and I've seen many interviews for years. I remember seeing you break down Ravel's Prelude a few years ago and was fascinated by that. And every one of your
Wow, thank you.
conversations have just been awesome. So I'm so honored to be a part of this. So thank you so much.
Thank you for doing this with me. This has been super
Yeah,
inspiring, and I love your work, and I
thank you.
love hearing what you do, seeing what you do, and thank you for sharing all of that
Yeah,
today.
my pleasure.